Hello friends, today we will take a slow, old trip to the past to a land where the nights last so long. The air is cold deep inside, and warm home heaters are not there. You're in a medieval village now, and a small secret, you likely will not live. Winter is coming now, and it's not a pretty story. It's real. It is mean, and it's here now to chew on your fingers, your toes, and your wish to keep living. So before you settle down, take a small moment to like this show and subscribe, but only if you really enjoy what I make here. And while you're doing this, write your town and the time you are seeing this in the messages. I wish to understand what kind of night you are having. So make the lights low, maybe put on a fan for a quiet little sound, and we will begin today's trip together. You walk out of your wood house and you pull your wool cape more closely all around your body. The sun has gone below the world, and a sharp, small wind blows through the straw-roofed town like a bad man with a knife. Each water spot is now like broken glass. The ground is hard. Smoke crawls from the fireplaces, moving to a sky with no color. Your own breath makes a fog, staying in the air like a spirit that does not want to leave. It is the middle of December in a small town with no name, somewhere in the north of Europe. Maybe it is England or France, or it could be the Holy Roman Empire. It does not matter. The place where you are now, it is very cold. The little birds have flown. The tall trees are like bones. The green fields are now stiff below the frost. If you had lots of money, this time of year would be for furs and big meals. But you have no money. You are a simple worker. And you go from one time of year to the next, just wishing the next part does not end you. The truth is, the cold time wants you to be gone, and it is not even hiding that it feels this way. By this part of the year, most of what you have saved is getting low. You have salted your meats, dried your beans, and maybe, if you have good luck, a few root plants are hidden in the cool basement. You may have a little bit of cheese with green spots, but still okay to eat. The biggest worry now is keeping your fire alive all through the long night, because when it is gone, it is like asking the cold to come live deep inside your body. You look up at your small house, your home, if it can be called that. It is a short building made of wood and mud and a strong hope. The roof is made of straw and it really needs to be fixed. The walls are a mix of wood and daub, which is a nice way of saying sticks covered with mud and animal poop. The windows are only small little cuts, sometimes with oily cloth or thin animal skin to block the wind, but nothing can block all of it. The home is more full of wind than a big barn that has stage fright. Inside of it, there is a fire pit that you and your family almost pray to because it is the one thing that is standing between you and the cold, cold arms of death. Smoke comes out from it. Sometimes very slowly, sometimes with an angry little turn. It depends on how the chimney is feeling, which does not always want to do its work. When it gets blocked, which happens a lot, the whole room fills up with smoke, and your eyes get watery like you were just seen cutting onions while feeling very bad. You may be thinking, well, there is wood for the fire. Cute. You were out in the forest the whole fall time, carrying back every single thing that even looked a little bit like a piece of wood. But you had to be careful. The great Lord owns almost all of the forest. By the rules, every twig, piece of wood, and fallen tree is all his. To take wood when you are not allowed, that is called poaching. The punishments go from paying money to being hit, to, yes, you know what is next, death. Because it seems that dying from the cold is not exciting enough. So you take what you can find. Small sticks, tree skin, dry animal poop, peat if you are near some wet land. If you have something a little better to burn, like birch or oak, you use it carefully like it is gold. Each log has more value than many of your things because without those logs, your own house is not a safe place. It is a cold tomb that has a nice look at the snow. And the snow, it is not pretty. It is not fluffy. It comes down wet and cold, then freezes again at night, turning into a hard, ankle-hurting problem. It gets in through all the little cracks, and when the wind makes noise, it gets to you in your home, inside your clothes, and in your very own bones. That is not like a poem. That is just how your body works. Your body is working 3 times as hard just to keep all your fingers from dying. And if you think more clothes help, just remember, clothes are not easy to get from a store. You have one wool shirt, maybe some pants, and a big cloak that has been fixed so many times it might be called a big, warm blanket. Fun fact, the name winter is from an old W. Ord that means time of water. And yes, that makes sense. Water that is hard like ice, water that is like cold rain, water that gets in your boots because they have more holes than real leather now. But here is something strange. Smart people are still talking about if the winters were really that much colder long ago, or if it is just how we think about our weather now that is different. Some old books speak of rivers freezing hard and grape juice turning to ice inside a room. Others think people just felt it more because staying warm was, a big fire and a little prayer. There is even a long-running talk among smart people about if the time called the Little Ice Age began in the 1300s or at an earlier time. In any case, you are cold now, and the big talk is not going to stop your own feet from becoming blue. So what do? You stay very low. You keep the fire safe by putting ashes on the hot parts, wishing it will still be warm in the morning. You hold your family near, very near. You all sleep in a single bed, maybe on a bed made of straw if you are lucky, or just on the floor near to the fire. And yes, the dog is in there too, and maybe a baby pig or two. You are not being kind, you are being smart. Every warm body is a help. Tonight is only the first of so many cold, awake, and sniffly nights. You are going to make it through, but only just. But winter is a very long game, and this is just the very first move. You go back into the house, your fingers are already cold even though they are held tight in your cape. The door does not really fit in the frame, it has not for years. So even when it is all the way shut, a small line of moonlight and cold wind comes across the hard dirt floor. You push a loose bit of fabric against the open part, and you kick it with your foot for good measure, even though you know it will not help very much. The cold in this room has its own way of being. It goes under some things, gets over other things, finds the spaces, stays near the floor and stays in the corners. And the very worst part, the walls wattle and daub. It sounds nice, right? Like a thing you could get at a pretend farmer's market. In truth, it is just twisted sticks covered in mud and straw and animal poop all dried to a shell. Then it is forgotten until the next big rain or hard cold makes it into the world's own air cooling machine. It was not costly. It was not hard. It was for sure not warm. You can really feel the air coming right through. Put your hand on the inner wall and the cold will bite you back. It is not only cold, it is wet. The kind of wetness that gets in your chest and it never really goes away. Coughs sound louder inside your lungs in winter, going all around like they are bored ghosts. You have known other people, young and old and strong and stubborn, who did not wake up one day in the morning. The warm fire had gone out. Their own breathing had stopped. That was all. There is a little window close to the fire. And by window, of course, we mean a space with a piece of cloth made see-through with oil and nailed over it like a bad plan someone had seen in a larger town. It makes the moonlight into long, scary lines. The sides of the linen are covered with ice. On the very coldest nights, you will scratch the inside, not the outside. And do not try breathing on it to make a clear spot. Your warm breath will just freeze right away. You have learned that the hard way, likely while you were checking to see if anything was moving in the yard, or maybe just wishing to see a sign that the snow had stopped. Over there in the corner, there's a short bed frame filled with hay, covered with a scratchy wool blanket and a sheep's skin that smells a little bit like its first owner. It makes a noise when you sit down on it. The straw making a sound below you like it is old paper. You have fixed the holes in the covering so many times it is now more thread than cloth. Now when the wind gets stronger, it shakes the shutters and makes a noise between the wall boards like it is an upset ghost. You put your hands on the wall and you think for the 1000th time what it would be like if warmth could come out of it. Like magic or like a bad thing. In the evenings, after all the work is finished and the day's light has gone out of the sky, you and your whole family sit close here. The fire is the only thing with light, moving yellow and orange across the dark stained walls. There is no warm stuffing, no special stove, no coal heater, only fire. If you are lucky, it burns without smoke. If you are not, and you usually are not, the smoke goes to the side, moving up into the straw where it stays like a lazy gray cloud. Your eyes are watery all the time. Your lungs feel sore. Your nose drips and freezes. But there is a thing that is almost comfy about this in a very strange, very live-or-die kind of way. The closeness, the shared bad time, the scratchy noise of a person knitting in. A corner, the smell of what is cooking in the big pot. A secret, it is cabbage. It is always cabbage. You share your stories, you talk softly, you share news, you tell old tales for the 100th time. Sometimes you all sit with no words, just looking at the fire. It makes you sleepy. It is warmish. It is your lifeline. Here is the strange little fact of the night. Smart diggers have really found burn marks on the old medieval wood pieces inside the houses, because some people used to light very small fires inside their very own beds. No chimney, no good airflow, just a bed box with a little fire pot tucked beneath the blanket like a death wish hot water bottle. It was known as a bed warmer. You would think they were making a very bad thing for themselves, and they were. Every winter, some not-so-lucky person would burn down their own small house while just trying not to freeze to death in it. Sad, but strangely easy to understand. At the same time, the smart people are still talking about how much of this life was desperation, or just how it was made. Some do believe that these small houses were built this not-so-well on purpose, with the thought that too much warm stuffing would keep water in and cause the wood to rot. Others say they just did not have the things or the smarts to make them better. Could they have made things better with soft moss? Probably. Did they do it? Not very often. It is one of those hard history questions where the true answer is now buried under many years of cold ground and forgotten facts. And then there is the roof. Oh, the roof. But we will talk about that very soon. For right now, you try to think of other things with simple little habits. You cover your feet with some rags. You put your hands in your armpits. You lean close to the hearth and you breathe in the smoke, making believe it is warm. And when that does not work, you take the sheep's skin, put it on your shoulders like a falling king's old cloak, and walk slowly to the bed frame. Sleep comes very slowly in a room that is this cold. You lie there with your eyes still open, looking at the wood beams, counting all the creaks. Every once in a while, you will hear a bump, a piece of ice that has slipped from the straw, or maybe a rat looking at your stored-up grain. You pull the covers up higher and try to think of a summer so very hot that you begged for some cool air. It feels like something that comes from a dream, like wood for the fire that never ends, or wool clothes that keep the cold outside, or boots that do not have any leaks. You turn over, being careful not to move the blanket too much. Warmth is very special, and when it is gone, it is all gone. In the darkness, you listen to your family's breathing. Their own sleep is not deep. Everyone is always halfway not asleep in the winter. Just in case the fire goes out, just in case a thing should break, just in case you do not wake up, at last your body gives up. Not to feel comfy, but to be so tired. The wind makes noise, the fire moves, and you go into sleep with the cold pushed up against your back like a lover you do not want. You wake with a jump, not due to any sound, but because your own nose feels like it has been put in some ice water. You open your eyes in the dark, and for a short time you think you can no longer see. But no, there is some moonlight coming in through the bent window cover, making silver-colored shadows all across the hard dirt floor. Your own breath makes a cloud before your face, now thicker than it was when you went to sleep. That means the fire is nearly out, or it could be that it is already gone. You get up slowly, being careful not to move the blankets off from the rest of the pile that is your own family. Legs all mixed up, bodies pushed close like clothes in a box. You are all wrapped up together in one bumpy bed. Your littler sibling is making noises. Your father says something soft under his breath, and your mother's foot, very cold, is stuck right between your own two knees. You clench your teeth and you leave it there. Everyone is trying to take warmth from all the others, and there is no space for talking about it. Up above you, the straw roof hangs, you can barely see it. In the bright daytime, you can see all the gaps, little spaces, where the straw is getting thin or has gone missing on the inside. At night, you feel the chill as it comes down through those unseen cracks, coming down like a soft fog from the sky. Straw-covered roofs were not made to be without any flaws. They were made to be not costly and kind of working. Mostly they were good at letting rain fall off as long as they were very thick and kept everything fixed up. But no one fixes roofs in the winter. That is some work for the spring when the ice has all gone and you can go up a ladder without becoming a medieval ice pop. Still, you can recall the last big rain sometime in the month of October when you woke up to drips right on your own forehead. A little. Mouse had made a nest in the straw roof and chewed a small path all the way right through. Water came falling down like a punishment from God, making your blanket and your patience wet. You had put a ball of rags up there and you wished for the best. It is still there, staying in place like a bandage that is not giving up. Thatch is not only straw, it is a whole small world of its own. Mice, spiders, tiny bugs, and birds. All different kinds of visitors make their home in that warm, old mess above your very head. You have seen birds go in and disappear into the roof like it is some magic land. On nights with wind, the whole entire thing makes hissing and moving sounds like a thing that is alive and scratching to get out. And when the snow gets very heavy, you just pray. You pray that the heavy weight does not break the whole roof or send a wet stream of half-rotten straw right down into your own bed. It has taken place before, not to you, but to the widow Gilder 3 small houses away. One night there was a roof, the next there was the sky, just like that. And fun fact, straw-covered roofs were not only weak against the rain, they were also very good for burning. A single hot spark jumping too far from the fire and whoosh, the whole entire thing could catch on fire like a dry sponge. In a few towns, some rules were finally made that said you needed chimneys, not open fires. But good luck making those rules stick among the poor. Chimneys were for the rich folk. You have got a hole in your roof and a big bucket of hope. There is still a little bit of a glow from the fire. Not flames exactly, but red-hot coals pulsing like the very last heartbeat of a god that is dying. You walk over to it, the blanket still on your shoulders like a very sad cape, and you blow softly on the hot coals. A small puff of ash goes up, making your own eyes hurt. You put in a stick, nothing. Another one, then at last, the very littlest flicker of a flame, the kind that seems like it is playing a game with you. You feed it very slowly, straw, dried out moss, a thin piece of tree skin until the flame goes upward and makes moving shadows on all the walls. It is not warm, not right now, but it is living. That is all you need. Your breath still makes a ghost in the air, but at least there is now a main spot, a thing to sit around. You sit with your legs crossed and put your hands out to the moving light, moving your fingers very slowly. They make a sound and hurt. The cold has made your own joints stiff during the night. In the corner, the family dog, some mixed dog with wiry fur and fleas that never leave, walks slowly to the heat, turns around once, then falls down like a wet pillow. You think about curling up next to him, and you likely will once your toes begin to hurt again. There is something strangely calm about these early times before the rest of the house moves. The silence is very thick, except for a pop now and then from the fire or a low sound from the bed pile. Outside, the whole world is so quiet. No carts, no bells, only wind and some snow. Maybe the faraway call of a fox or an owl. In the deepest part of winter, the whole world gets as small as the size of your house. The thought of going to any other place, especially by foot, seems like a crazy thing. Now here is the funny bit. Some people in villages used to think that if your roof had too much of the frost, it meant the people inside were cursed with cold-hearted ways. No warm feelings inside, no warm feelings outside. It makes no sense, of course, but you can be sure people talked softly about it. Auntie so-and-so has not had the frost melt from her roof in days. Must be a bad witch. That sort of thinking was very dangerous in the wrong kind of crowd. As the fire gets bigger, the smell of last night's cooked meal still stays. Onions, root plants, and a thing that is a little bit meaty. That with the always there scent of smoke, wet wool, and being human. It is a strong smell that you do not notice after some time, like the sound of a mill or the hurt of hard skin. You just get used to it. There is no bath that is coming to wash it all away. No clean linen sheet to fall down into. This is your life, your own bed, your own roof, and it is barely staying in one piece. There is another creak up above you. Probably the winds, or it is probably just the roof moving, but your own eyes look up anyway. Always looking, always thinking. Could it fall down tonight? Could it let in a thing that is worse than the snow? Outside, the frost shines a little in the light before the sun. The world is all white, still and completely without mercy. You hear your father moving in the bed, coughing very hard into the bend of his arm. That deep, wet noise you have heard all of the winter, maybe longer. Your mother says something low, half still asleep. Soon the day will begin. Work, finding wood, taking care of what few animals have not yet frozen until death. But for right now, it is only you, the warm fire, and the slow, loud complaint of a roof made of just straw keeping the long night barely out. You know what is much worse than waking up in a cold medieval cottage? Waking up in a cold medieval cottage with no things left to burn. That is your problem right now. The little fire you brought back to life with such a careful way is already getting smaller again. Like it is too weary to deal with this winter thing. It has to have more fuel. The big problem. Fuel does not come from the trees, not the ones you are allowed to even touch anyway. You put on your hard boots, if you can call them that. More like they are hardened bags of leather that look a little bit like shoes. The bottoms are broken, the sewing is coming apart, and there is a funny smell that makes you think something once died in one of them. But they are all you own, and the frostbite eating at your toes is not really giving you a different choice. You wrap your woolen cloak tighter all around your shoulders, put your hood down low, and get ready for the morning's search. Not for something to eat. Those days are very far gone. For some firewood, stepping out of the house is like walking into a big slap. The wind smacks your face with the cold dislike of a mean landlord. The ground makes a crunch noise below your boots. Ice and old snow with holes from hooves and the frozen marks of things you do not want to know. The sky is a flat, dark gray, like wet wool that is stretched over all the heavens. You cannot see the sun, but you know it is up there somewhere, likely judging you. Most of the easy wood places were all picked over in the late fall time. That is when the entire village changed into a needy army of searchers looking at the sides of the Lord's forest for anything that looked a little bit like it would burn. Branches that fell, dried out pine cones, even thorny bushes. If it could burn, it was good to take. Or, well, not so good to take by the rules. The forest is not yours. It is owned by the manor, and taking any wood from it when not allowed is against the law. Not just disliked, it is punished. You think of old Bert, bent almost in half with age, who had his ear cut for sneaking out after dark with a pile of sticks under his big cloak. You told yourself it would not be you. You have gotten very good at telling yourself some lies. Today you stay very near to the sides of the public fields, looking in ditches and along fences for dead sticks and limbs the wind blew down. It is not very much. You kick at a pile of snow and you find a piece of half-rotten wood that is wet all through and about as easy to burn as a wet sponge. You put it in your pocket anyway. Your own standards have gone down a lot. There is also the fuel that no one talks about, at least not with any pride, dried out animal poop. It is called cow chips in a few places, field pies in the others. You have burned a good many of them. If you shut your eyes and you squint your own nose, it can smell almost like some wood. Almost. You find some hard lumps near the side of the animal pens and you scoop them right into your sack. At this moment, you are not looking for heat. You are looking for a way to live, and your pride was given up about 3 winters ago. A funny little fringe fact right here. Some places, especially high up in the moors, used a lot of peat. Spongy plant stuff dug out of the bogs, dried in the hot sun, and then burned just like coal. It made a long, smoky heat, and you could save up a lot. But if you did not live close to a peat bog, you were not in any luck. Peat was a special gift from nature, and not everyone got to have some. You go back home with a pile that looks and smells like the very worst party present, but it will make a fire. Kind of. You push the door shut behind you and you put the cold treasures down by the hearth. The fire is down to a reddish glow now, barely warm enough to make a flea feel warm. You get down, take the drier stick, and you put it in. The flame does catch, not very fast, but just enough to make a breath of relief come from your chest. You put in a few cow chips and get ready for the slow, bad perfume that will come. It goes through the room like a wet sock in a warm pan, sharp and very earthy. The smell of desperation now floating in the air. Your little brother makes a sound and puts a corner of the blanket on his head. Your mother says something about the olden days when your grandfather had some real wood. You all pretend you do not notice the bad smell anymore. Now, the smart people still talk about if not having enough firewood was all the time or just in seasons. Some will say it changed a lot from one village to another village, depending on how much the local lord watched the forests. Others say that peasant families always had some kind of fuel saved up, even if it was just an old fence, tools that were broken, or bits from that one stool that no one liked. Anyway, there are some stories, maybe LF made up, maybe not, about families that burned whole parts of their very own homes just to stay alive. Doors, bed frames, the wheels of carts. When the deep frost went too far into the bones, good feelings did not have a big chance. You look at your own home things, not many are there. A crooked stool, a simple table, and the bed. The bed is very special. The rest is not so sure. You have seen the dog look at the stool like it could just fall on its own if you only sneezed right at it. Give it one more week of this deep cold, and you might make it into fuel without a second thought. Outside, the wind makes a noise through the cracks in all the walls, coming in under the door like a bad guy with cold, cold fingers. The fire makes a noise and pops, and for a short time the room almost feels not too bad. You sit near the hearth, pull the blanket up close to your chin, and try to make your toes warm with just your own willpower. Your father starts to cough again. He puts his cloak tighter and points to the sack. Any more? He is asking, and he already knows the answer. You shake your head no. He makes a sound, not upset, just like he has given up. That is how all the people sound in winter. I gave up. Like you are waiting in a very long line for the spring, and no one is sure if the booth will ever be open. The fire cracks much louder now, touching a wet pine cone that is letting out a pop of sap with a funny, small whistle. You lean very close, let the warmth get into your cheeks, and you give yourself 5 minutes of some peace. That is about how long it will last before someone says they need to go out again later. For wood, always for more wood, because if the fire goes out all the way, so do you. At some point in the short, gray afternoon, the wind outside gets stronger again. Sharp, very bitter, and loud enough to make a noise through every space in the wall, the roof, and even the floorboards. It makes a sound like a hungry animal that is circling your small house. You know that noise very well. It is the sound of winter itself, telling you how weak your safe place is. The sun is not anywhere to be seen, but you can feel the light going away, and that tells you all the things you need to know. It is almost night time once more. Time to go into the one place in this whole entire world that pretends to give you some warmth. The bed box. To call it a bed box is being nice. It is more like a wood closet with a soft bed pushed in and a pair of swinging doors that kind of shut but mostly make noises of complaint. Still, it is where you go to sleep every single night. Shoulder to shoulder, knee to your back, breath to nose with your whole entire family. There are 6 people. And no, the bed is not made for 6 people. It is made to not die of frost and not much more than that. Tonight, like every cold winter night, you go through the same quiet little habit. First, you take off your cloak and you hang it near the fire so it can dry, though it does not ever really dry. Then you put on your sleeping shirt, usually just a long wool shirt that is hard in some spots and very thin in other spots. Socks stay on if you own them. If you are lucky, the rags you wrapped around your feet this morning have not frozen all the way hard. The bed already has a smell like sweat, some smoke, and wet straw. It is a smell you link with feeling safe, though nothing about it really is. Getting inside the bed box is like pushing yourself into a hard puzzle. Your older brother's 2 legs are already spread all across the foot. Your little sister has taken most of the warm middle, and your parents are curled up like 2 lines on each side. You push your way in, twisting just the right way to find a spot where your own ribs are not poking someone else's backbone. It is tight, it is cramped, and every little move could start a whole line of groans, some coughs and sharp elbows. But here is the truth. This big mess of legs and body warmth is your only real protection from the cold. The walls cannot stop it. The fire will not get this far. But closed together in this human-made nest, you make a kind of soft warmth. Shared, not perfect, but so important in the middle of winter. Nothing is more special than another warm body right beside you. Fun fact, box beds just like these were really seen in colder parts of Europe, Scotland, the Low Countries, and some parts of France. And yes, the families really did sleep in them close together, often with a curtain or some wooden doors to keep in the heat. It was not just for the warmth, either. It gave a small bit of private space in a one-room house, though calling it private space when your feet are in another's face is a big stretch. You have got more closeness with your own brother's toenails than most married pairs. Some people had to sleep on the floor close to the fire instead, especially if the family was very large, or if the bed box was being used by the old ones or the small babies. That might sound like a good thing, more room closer to the warm heat. But remember, the fire goes out and floors are cold and hard and full of things you don't expect. Rats, for one. You have seen them run past more than one time. Big, bold bandits. And let us not speak of what can happen if someone gets up in the night to go to the pot and does not hit the chamber pot. You pull the sheep's skin over you and you try not to think about how much it smells like a wet barn. Someone lets out a big sneeze, another loud cough. A foot moves close to your ribs. You lie there, your eyes open, getting used to the dark and the sounds of your family getting all settled in. The wind slams hard against the shutters like it wants to come in. You pull the blanket tight around your shoulders and breathe out very slowly, letting the heat of your breath warm the small space in front of your own face before it is taken away. Now, here is a hot little scholarly talk. Did peasants really always go to sleep this way? Whole families all pushed into a single bed like they were pickled fish. Some historians say that yes, for sure, it was the normal way in the winter. Others say that how people slept changed a lot depending on the size of the whole family, the way the home was built, and even the local ways. In some other regions, the servants and children slept in other lofts or rooms, leaving the 2 parents all alone in the main bed. But in the deep part of winter, when death was just a broken window away, you did not care about your own private space. You cared about body heat. You move once more, trying to make the pressure on your hip feel better where it is pushed against a wood beam. Your sister says something in her sleep and hits your arm. You push her foot out of your face and you hold your own 2 arms tightly across your own chest. This is the way you will stay for the next 8 to 10 hours, or until your leg is all asleep, or until the fire is gone and you must get up and make it new with the last bit of your cow poop and your own pride. The bed makes a noise with every single breath. The walls make a sound in answer to the wind. You can hear the dog sigh very heavily near the hearth. You try not to think about the fact that you will be up before dawn hauling pails, getting sticks, maybe digging out the door if the piles of snow get too high. But for right now, you let your own eyes close. Maybe you will dream of the summer, of lying in a sun-warmed field, the grass so soft beneath you, the air making a sound with the bees. Maybe you will dream of some bread that does not get old, or some boots that do not leak, or having a whole bed all to yourself. Or maybe you will not dream at all, just the numb, moving darkness of winter sleep. Whatever may come, you will face it all together, jammed elbow to rib in this wooden box of people, breathing as one against a world that would rather see you frozen. You wake before the sun once more, though wake might be a word too strong. It is more like you slowly begin to know that your eyes are open, and your limbs are quite sore, and your face feels like it has been left in a pile of snow overnight. Inside the bed box, the air is not fresh and very sharp. The kind of coldness that stays on your own skin, even below the layers of wool and the sheep's skin. You try to move, but there is some weight on your leg. Your sister is still deeply asleep, her 2 feet stuck between your knees like she owns that very joint. You push her off with care and you crawl toward the side of the bed, joints making sounds like old wood. The floor is made of ice, actual ice. You step down and at once regret it. Your feet making a promise of revenge against the people who did not make slippers. You reach for your own clothes, wool shirt, some pants, a second shirt that is barely called warm, and you begin the slow layering process. Everything feels hard, a little wet, and a bit smoky from being too close to the hearth, but it is much better than your bare skin, which would likely just break off at this time. There is no looking glass, but if there were, you would see a walking mix of wool and leather and very tired eyebrows. Medieval winter looks for peasants are not about a style. It is about staying alive. Your own shirt is made of rough homemade wool, the same color as old oatmeal. Whether that is a sleeveless wool overdress or a tunic, it depends on your gender and what you can get. Then you have the cloak, a very heavy thing with a big hood held at the neck with a small bit of twine and some hope. No buttons, no zippers, just some layers on some layers. If you own a belt, you pull it very tight. If not, you just pretend that it is fashionably large, and let us speak about under things or not having them. Linen, the material of underclothes and fancy things, is not common and costs a lot. You might have a single shift, or you might have to do without. Socks, maybe some wool wraps, more likely sewn. Strips of cloth you wrap around your feet and you hope they stay put for more than an hour. Gloves, more like some mittens if you are very lucky. And even with those, they have no fingers. You get used to your own fingertips having no feeling. After some time, the fringe clothing part you are strangely thankful for, sheep's skin. Not soft, not cleaned up, just the real pelt of a sheep put over your shoulders or sewn into a simple vest. It smells like a sheep, but it keeps the wind off your own back, and it holds the body heat that would otherwise get out through your thin, unhappy wool. There is also a strange fringe way that has been talked about by history people. People in colder parts sometimes wore some moss or hay pushed into their clothes for more warm stuffing. Not pretty, not very clean. But if you were walking through snow piles and all you had was a single tunic and no working feeling in your own toes, you might start to think about a handful of dry straw down your own pants. Being practical over being proud always. Back by the hearth, your mother is already awake, blowing on the hot parts, her face covered in a cloth to keep the morning cold from hurting her cheeks. She is wearing the same formless layers she has worn the whole week with the new part of a wool head cover tied very tight over her hair. She does not look right at you, just nods her head like, "Yes, we are doing this once more." She stirs the big stew pot, the same one from the day before and the day before that. Perpetual stew, a medieval old favorite. You keep the pot on the fire. You add scraps when you can find them. Water when it gets low, bones if you are very lucky. It does not ever really stop. Just cooks slowly and it changes like some kind of broth-based religion. You sit near the fire with your bowl and you breathe in the hot steam. It smells earthy and a little bit sour like some roots, old cabbage, maybe a small trace of salted pork from last week's nice surprise. You eat very fast, not because you are so hungry, though you are, but because the bowl makes your hands warm and fogs up your own nose. And for 5 very good minutes, you feel almost like a real human. You look around the small room. Everyone is in their layers right now, moving around like bundled shadows. The dog is licking its own paw in front of the warm fire, proud of its ability to grow its very own fur coat. Your father wraps a piece of rough linen around his head like it is a makeshift scarf and says something about chopping some kindling. Your brother is putting his boots on with the same pained face he has for tooth pain and for church. Here is a strange history detail. Some peasants really slept in their day clothes, every layer that they owned, just so they did not have to put them on in the morning. It made some sense. Why change into a thing that is cold when you could hurt less? But if your clothes became wet during the day from snow with some rain or bad luck, you had to take them all off or you might freeze in the night. And putting them back on in the warm morning, think of getting into a pail of slush and asking it to give you a hug. That is what it felt like. The scholars talk about if layering some wool was as good as our modern clothing tech. Likely not, but wool is very strange. It keeps you warm even when it is wet. It smells like a wet goat. For sure, but it does work. So you pile it on and move around all the time, and you hope your body heat does not get out faster than you can make it. You finish your own meal and you rub your hands over the fire once more. Outside, the light is a little bit stronger, putting pale beams through the frosted cloth over the small window. The wind has not stopped. You can hear it pull at the corners of the cottage like it is trying to peel the whole place open. You check the door frame. It is still holding for right now. Your mother gives you a scarf, more of a rag in truth, and you tie it over your mouth and nose. The air out there is sharp enough to take your own breath, and you have learned the very hard way that bare skin in the cold wind is a way to have regret. You grab your basket and your little axe and you go for the door. You stop before opening it, looking at the bundled people around the hot hearth. Everyone has the very same look, tired, ready, with empty eyes, but very strong. Winter does not become easier. You just get much better at faking you are strong. You pull the door open and you step out into the white. The cold smacks you like a sack of stones that are soaked in cold rain. You look into the wind, your eyes at once watering, though the tears will freeze at the corners before they can fall. Your scarf helps a little bit, but not very much. It is like trying to fight off a big bear with a very polite request. The snow is knee-high in some spots now with some patches of hard ice that break all at once under your foot, making every step into a big guess. Sky is a hard gray, thick with the clouds that promise more bad things before the day is over. But you are not out here for the nice view. You are out here for your food. You make your way to the shared cooking shed. Really just a small shelter with stone walls and a roof that is sagging. Inside, the air is almost not bad, at least next to the air outside. This is where the stew lives. The stew, always there, special, almost magical in how long it lasts. You lift the heavy wood top of the big pot that hangs over a low fire and are at once met by the very clear scent of staying alive. Onions, turnip, a small bit of barley, and a thing that might have once been some meat. It is very hard to tell. Everything has been cooked into a soft, same-looking thing. This stew has been cooking for days, maybe even weeks. No one is very sure anymore. It is filled up often with whatever can be found. Cooked bones, old cabbage, even some saved bread crusts if a person is feeling special. Every person in the town adds to it when they can, which means it is a mix of being kind and being needy, stirred into a thing that is kind of good for you. You scoop some into a wood bowl and you breathe it in. It is not yummy, but it is hot, and being hot is just enough. You sit on a low stool by the stone wall and you eat very fast, your eyes shut, enjoying the warmth it sends all through your chest. Around you, other people are doing the same thing. known hunched shapes in very heavy layers, spooning down big mouthfuls of peasant magic. There is a strange good feeling to it, a daily habit. Everyone knows that the stew is not about how it tastes. It is about food power and heat. It is about the plain fact that some warm food helps you keep going just a little bit longer. You are not all alone either. This kind of always there stew, sometimes called the eternal pot, was a common way across medieval. In colder places especially, the fire never got cold and the stew never really was finished. One big pot, one hot fire, many, many meals. Meat is a very rare thing. If there is any meat in today's bowl, it is likely something very small. A squirrel, a little bird, maybe even a thin slice of salted pork from a family that had a pig to give. Mostly you are eating roots, some carrots, turnips, some onions, parsnips, things that can grow under the ground and do not go bad very fast. The feeling is soft, the taste is earthy. Every once in a while someone will add some herbs, dried out nettles if they looked for them, maybe a small pinch of salt if they are really feeling brave. But the spices, that is a funny joke. Those are for the rich folk and the spice sellers. You are very lucky if your stew does not taste like boiled wool and some sad tears. Quirky fact of the night. Some of the villages had stew pots that really never did stop, given down from one group of people to the next one. A kind of food you can get as a gift. There are some stories, half old tales, half real, of pots kept going for many decades, always kept warm, always being fed. One French village was said to have a stew that lasted for whole centuries, with the locals joking that some of the very first meat was likely still in there. Gross, maybe, but nice in a strange old family way. A shared soup of memory and staying alive. You scrape your own bowl clean and you wipe your mouth with the soft sleeve of your cloak. No one uses napkins. You nod your head to the others and you step out again, the wind hitting your skin like it had missed you. The stew's own warmth is already going away from your stomach, but you keep the memory of it inside of you like a small secret. You will need it later tonight. Back at your cottage, the sun is already now thinking about leaving for the day, and it is not even late afternoon. Winter takes away your time. It is always pushing you to the dark, to the firelight, to another very long part of blackness. But before the night comes, there is one more job, checking the food you have. You go into the small root cellar near your own home, a hole dug in the ground and covered with some planks, straw, and a wood hatch that makes a noise like an old man's knees. Inside, it is even colder than it is outside, but at least the hard wind cannot find you. Your own breath makes a fog at once as you check on your saved food. A few wrinkly carrots, some turnips with little tops, a handful of some onions, and half a round of cheese that smells like a bad trick. There is a pile of dried herbs that is hanging from the ceiling, and in the corner a cloth-wrapped bundle of special dried beans. You nod your head half happy. It is not a big meal, but it is enough for right now. You bring the vegetables up into the house and you toss a few of them into the pot by the fire. Let it cook all night. Let it do what it is supposed to do. Be there, always there and plain, waiting to make you warm again tomorrow. The pot makes a hissing and bubbling sound, the scent of onion and of garlic moving into the air like it is a soft song. It will taste much better by morning, you tell yourself. It always does. The longer it will cook, the more everything gets soft. The more the tastes all mix, the more you think the lie that this stew is so good that it is just fine that you are fine. And here is where the scholars cannot really agree. Was the stew the main winter food for most of the peasants, or was it just one of many foods to stay alive? Some say that porridge played just as big a role, especially in places with good grain stores. Others may think stew was the king, especially in forest places where wild greens, roots, and small wild animals were common to add. What everyone does agree on, though, is that hot food means hope. As long as the pot was bubbling, life could keep on going. You sit near the hearth again, watching the fire move beneath the big pot. Your hands stay above the hot flames, your face tingling from the change in how warm it is. Behind you, your family settles in one by one, coming closer to the warm fire. The stew bubbles softly, a slow, sure heartbeat that tells you this night will be cold but not be empty. You know that warm, sleepy feeling you can get when you have just had a hot meal and the fire is burning so low, and for one very good second you think maybe this night won't be so very bad. Yeah, that is cute, but that is not how winter works. Because just as you are getting used to that short moment of feeling comfy, something moves behind the wall. Not a big moving sound, just a little one like tiny claws on wood. Then another one, then a soft little patter followed by a small squeak. And you remember with a very deep sigh that you are not the only one who is trying to live through winter in this small cottage. Not by a very long shot. Welcome to the medieval peasants' winter house guests. Mice, lice, and every little crawling thing that thought your cottage looked much better than freezing until death outside. They are not visiting you. They live here. You are the one visiting. You just pay them rent in soup steam and your own body heat. You look at the wall where the sound was coming from, but of course there is nothing to see. That is the nice part about mice. They are very fast, quiet, and always a little bit out of your sight. You know they are back behind the wattle and daub. Likely a whole entire family of them all curled up in a warm nest made of stolen wool and hay and whatever little bits of food they have found on your own kitchen floor. You used to try and trap them, but you have made a quiet sort of peace now. They do not bite you. They do not make loud sounds, and in some very strange way they are kind of a comfort. Like if the little mice can live through this cold, maybe you can also too. Lice, though, that is a different story. Those little guys are the very worst. Awake at night, never stopping, and surprisingly fair to all. Everyone gets some lice. Rich folk get them, priests get them, your whole entire family gets them. But peasants, you get the whole entire meal. Body lice, some head lice, maybe even a flea or two if your dog is feeling very kind. You try to keep them under some control. Combs, some ash, vinegar washes. But in winter, with no real chance of a good wash, you are fighting a hard war you cannot win. You scratch the back of your own neck without thinking and you roll your eyes at your own self. It is fine. It is very normal. You once heard a village old man say that if you did not wake up feeling itchy, you were likely now dead. It is funny how your own standards change. And then there are the bed friends no one asks for, but you just cannot make them leave. Spiders in the corners, little beetles under the floorboards, a very proud centipede that has made its home behind the hearth and comes out only when you are all alone and thinking about your life choices. Every creak and little sound is a reminder that this small cottage is more alive than it looks. But some of these small creatures are not just taking things for free. They are also, strangely, a real part of the living system. Mice, for example, often keep worse pests far away, like big rats. Rats are very bold and they will bite. You have heard some stories of babies being nibbled in their own sleep, food spoiled and clothes chewed up. Mice may steal your own grain, but rats will go for your own soul. So you learn to live with the tiny squeakers in return for keeping the big bad things at bay. You look over at the fire. It is still on for right now. The stew pot bubbles very softly. Your parents have already dozed off, curled near the hearth, covered in a shared blanket. Your siblings are half still asleep in the bed box, their legs spread out like they are lazy starfish. You should go join them, but the moving sound keeps coming and you cannot help but listen. Here is a strange fact. Some medieval folks really did believe that lice were a kind of bad thing from God, either for being bad or just as a reminder to be humble. Others, more with imagination, said they were born from sweat and from filth, not untrue by the rules. Still, it led to some really odd kinds of cures, like pushing warm garlic between your shoulders or wearing a small bag of fox fur under your tunic to make the fleas confused. You once tried the garlic idea. Your sister did not sleep near you for 3 whole nights. It was probably worth it. Scholars are still talking about just how bad the bug problem really was for the peasants. Some say it was all the time and very bad, especially during the winter when cleaning was so hard and warmth invited all different kinds of uninvited guests. Others say that medieval ways of being clean were not as bad as we now think, that some people combed their hair often, changed their clothes more than we give them good credit for, and even had shared bathhouses in a few of the towns. But you are not in a town. You are in a hut with a floor made of dirt, no bath, and a strong feeling of everyone is so itchy. You toss another small scrap into the fire and try not to feel the tingle on your own scalp. That is likely in your mind, but it might not be. The stew smells much stronger now, full of onion and of thyme. You wonder if the mice can smell it too. Likely, they are much smarter than they may look. You have seen one run across the floor like it had some things to do. It even stopped in the middle to clean itself, completely not bothered by your big towering self. One of your siblings lets out a long, sad sigh in their own sleep. The dog moves its paw and yips very softly. The fire cracks like it is trying to tell you something old. You pull your cloak much tighter around you and lie back on the wall. It is cold, but it is strong. You can feel the heartbeat of the house, the settling of the wood, the wind on the straw, the low sounds of other lives inside your own walls. And here is a detail that always makes you stop and think. Some people thought that keeping animals, even small pests, inside the home during winter was not just a thing you had to do. It was a good thing. The movement, the warm breath, the little bit of warmth they added could mean the difference between life and then death. A mouse nest in the wall, free warm stuffing, a dog at your own feet, a personal heater, a cat on your lap, a sign of status and pest killer. So maybe that moving sound behind the hearth is not the very worst thing in the whole world. Maybe it is just winter's way of telling you that you are not all alone, even in the coldest time. At last, you stand, you stretch, and you step toward the bed box. Someone has already taken your own spot, of course, so you push in at a new side, careful not to wake up the whole entire system. A cold draft slips down the back of your neck as you get settled in. The fire pops once more. The mouse squeaks one time and becomes all silent. You close your eyes. Tomorrow it all begins all over again. But for right now you have got stew in your stomach, a roof on your head, and the strangely nice company of fur and feet and fleas. You wake before the fire goes out all the way, moved from your tight sleep by a soft, wet noise just on the other side of the wall. At first, you think it is the wind once more, pushing through the straw roof with a bored kind of force. But then you do hear it, something much heavier, breathing, making a snort. You hold still, not from being scared exactly, but from knowing it. It is only the cow. Yes, you share your small cottage with a cow. Maybe a little goat, a piglet, or a few small chickens, too. It depends on the time of year and how lucky or in need you are. You cannot let them stay out in the barn during the winter. If you even have a whole barn, it is usually a weak lean to filled with hay and some bad feelings. Not exactly keeping wind out. In the deep part of winter, the animals will come inside. They stay close in a pen at the far side of the room, kept from your own sleeping spot by a low wood wall or in some other cases, nothing at all. You sleep within mooing range of a full-grown, gassy beast, but here is the very wild part. It really helps. The cow's own body gives off heat like a wool-covered, warm stove. Same with the pigs. Chickens are not as good, but they do a decent job of making the floorboards warm and scratching away all the silence. That side of the house may smell like a barnyard because it is, but the warmth that it gives is nothing less than a true miracle. You turn over now, wrapping your cloak tighter and thinking how very strange it is that your pillow is really a cabbage sack, your blanket smells just like a damp sheep, and your own heating system moves when it is asleep. But this is very normal. This is very smart. You stretch a little bit, and you listen as your father gets up. He makes a sound as he puts on his boots and he walks toward the animal pen, saying, "Greetings, T." Oh, the animals like they are work friends he barely can stand. "Morning, girl," he says to the big cow, patting her side, still breathing. "That is very good. Do not die on us today." She moves her ears, not impressed. He checks her water pail, frozen completely. Of course, he sighs and he carries it toward the hearth to thaw. Fun fringe fact: in some old medieval villages, it was not just the peasants who did this. Even richer families would bring their animals into the lower part of their homes in winter, especially in places like the Alps or in Scandinavia. In some other cases, the living spaces were above the big animals, letting the heat go up on its own. Think of that, your own bedroom over a huge cow furnace. Nice. If a little bit loud, your father kicks the pig awake very softly. It makes a grunt, blinks at him, then it rolls over like it is not taking any orders now. The chickens are still sitting on a shelf by the door, their own feathers all puffed into tight little balls. You look at them from the bed box and you wonder, not for the first time, if you will end up eating one of them before the month is all over. Not that there is much meat on them, but winter makes you change your mind about everything. Scholars still talk about if bringing animals inside was normal in all the regions or more of a survival trick used during very, very cold times. Some say it was an act of being in great need. Others say it was on purpose and clever, an early way of thermal regulation in houses that did not have warm stuffing. Either way, it makes the line between a home and a barn a bit blurry in a way that modern people would find very scary. But you just call it winter. You finally get out of the bed, being careful not to step on the dog who has made his home just outside the fire's circle. He lifts his head up lazily as you walk by and he licks his own nose. Not really offering for guard work. The air inside is very sharp but not freezing. That is the magic of the livestock. Breathing, snorting, farting, central heating. You grab the little wood shovel and you head out to get more frozen water from the well. The wind is so strong today, pulling ice crystals sideways through the whole air, painting all the things with a shine of frost. Your cloak snaps hard behind you like a big sail as you walk through the piled snow. The well is all covered with thick ice, the rope is frozen hard, the bucket making a sound with thin layers of white. It takes a few sharp hits and a lot of quiet curses to fill up your bucket. Your fingers go numb at once. You walk back inside, past the dog, past the chickens, past the pig, and you set the bucket by the fire to thaw. The cow moves and lets out a long, dramatic sigh. You kind of feel that way. By the middle of morning, the house smells like wet fur, some smoke, and onion soup. Your mother is already cutting vegetables into the stew, which has become so thick it is halfway between a soup and glue. It stays on your ribs, she says. That is very good. You will need it for all the chores. But before you go, you crouch down beside the cow, holding your palms out to the area of warmth that comes from her side. She smells like some hay and manure, but she is living, and right now, that is the only thing that is needed. The dog curls up beside her, putting his nose into her side like a child digging into her parent's lap. The pig is snoring now, with little grunts and loud breaths that echo through the roof beams. You lean against the cow's own side just for a short second and you close your eyes. Here is a funny truth. In some areas, people even talk to their animals during the winter. Not just giving orders, but full, long talks. It was not just from being bored. There was a very deep belief in the specialness of the animals, their loyalty, their closeness to God or to nature, or something right in between. In some families, the animals were a part of blessings, daily habits, even confessions. It is not very hard to think of. In a world this cold, the warm, blinking, breathing animal feels like a real miracle, especially one that does not judge your patchy socks or stew obsession. You sit a moment more until your father yells that the fire is dying once more, and it is your own turn to find some more fuel. You groan, you push yourself up, and you head back toward the door, brushing by the cow's own nose as you go. She gives you a half-lidded blink like, "Yeah, me too." And then she is already back to chewing whatever hay that made it through the frost. Out you go again into the wind, into the gray, into another day of looking, chopping, and being so cold. But this time you carry a little bit of warmth with you. Not from a fire, not from a blanket, but from the memory of standing next to something alive, something that is breathing, something that is warm. In winter, that is everything. The wind outside has a beat now, a steady, pulsing breath that hits the walls like some unseen smith. Is trying to shape the sky. It is not just very cold anymore. It is very loud. It makes a noise through the slats in the shutters, scrapes on the straw, and it screams down the chimney when it is feeling very dramatic. You try to not hear it, but it pushes on your ears just like guilt. The sun has not come up all the way, but the dark never really did leave. In winter, the daylight does not come. It just moves in like a dying candle, and then it runs away before supper. You are out getting some sticks again, bent over, nose dripping, your breath moving into the air like you are breathing out some ghosts. You have learned to listen very closely in this kind of cold, not just for breaking branches or for falling snow, but for some other things. Because as much as the people talk about hunger and about frostbite, it is the nights that really affect you. The fear, the stories, the things you cannot see, but you surely feel watching from the side of the woods. Every little village has its own winter stories. You know them by your heart because you have been hearing them since you were old enough to feel a shiver. Stories told softly by your grandmother while she was mending cloaks near the fire. Tales that were told in low voices on nights when the wind sounded just like crying. This is when the old ghosts will come out, she had said. When the veil gets thin, when the bad beasts of winter come out walking. You can feel it now as you walk back to the cottage. A sack of sticks put over your shoulder, eyes moving toward the line of trees. Nothing is moving, but that is the big point. It is far too still. Even all the birds are quiet. You hold the hatchet tighter. Back in the house, the fire is barely breathing. You put a few sticks in and you blow softly until the flames go up again, reaching long fingers all across the soot-covered stones. The room gets brighter just enough to push the edges of the dark from all the corners. But the stories stay on you like some smoke. You can still hear your own grandmother's voice, scratchy and full of the drama. She used to speak about the winter hag, a bent, old creature with eyes like some frostbite and fingers that were sharp enough to carve ice right from your bones. She walks the land in the snowstorms, your grandmother told you, looking for the houses where the fire has died. If she finds one that is cold and quiet, she comes in and she keeps it that way. You thought once you heard her out there, tapping at the shutters, moving her nails all along the door frame. Your father just laughed and he made the fire go higher. You sit near the hearth now and you look toward the tiny, bent window. The wind throws some powdery snow against it like it is a big tantrum. You pull your cloak much tighter and you try to remember if you set the fire right last night. If she finds the hearth all cold, she comes in. You poke the hot parts again just to be sure. It is not just the old hag. There is also the black dog, a ghost-like beast with glowing eyes that walks the roads in the night. You have never seen it, but one time your uncle came back from a long walk after dark, shaking and so pale, and he never walked the same path again. Some say it is guarding treasure. Others say it is just death in a disguise. Either way, you do not walk all alone in winter unless you really have to. And then there are the snow whites, some spirits made of snow and of breath and of sadness, born from the people who froze all alone in the woods. They do not talk, they only watch. If you look too long into the big trees, sometimes you can see shapes, tall and so pale, moving softly like some dancers you cannot quite remember. You have seen a thing like that once, maybe even twice, or maybe you dreamed about it. It is very hard to say. Winter makes the edges of all things blurry. Your mother does not like these kinds of stories, says they scare all the children and keep them from sleeping, but your father says they are good for a reason. Fear, he says, is just another way to be careful. You used to think he was being dramatic. Then you found some rabbit tracks circling your front door without ever coming closer to it. And that same night, the fire would not light. Quirky fact, many medieval families used special charms to keep the winter spirits far away. Herbs hung up above the door. Iron nails are put into the frame, signs carved into the beams. Some even kept piles of twigs, birch, rowan, or ash under their bed, thought to keep away the bad that came creeping in during the very long nights. You have got a small carved charm that is hanging above your window shaped like a bright sun. You touch it now just to feel the old lines under your own fingers. It does not keep out the cold, but it helps. And the scholars, oh, they love to talk about if these stories were just old beliefs, a metaphor, or just plain fear control. Some say they were good lessons wrapped in some frost and drama. Do not let the fire go oh. Tea becomes a tale of death with a bent back and some icy breath. Others think it was just a way to keep all the kids inside after it got dark. But here is the thing. When it is past midnight, the fire is almost gone and something creaks in the rafters. You are not thinking about a metaphor. You are thinking about if that noise is the wind or a thing that is older. A half-burned stick from the day before. You blow softly on the moving spark, and after what seems like many years, it catches. A flame small, so weak, but it is real. You sit back and breathe out, feeling relieved. Round one is won by you. Your sister is still all asleep, her breathing is thin, but it is steady. Her high fever has broken in the night, leaving her so pale and all wet with sweat. Your mother wipes her forehead with a wet rag, saying soft thanks to saints you have not ever met. You see her put a small gift, a wood cross carved from some ash beneath the soft blanket, just in case. You know what she is thinking now. You are thinking about it too. Some people do not wake up after nights like that one. It happens more than anyone will talk about. A man falls asleep near the warm fire and does not get up. A baby goes quiet in the cold night and never moves again. You heard about a family 2 towns over who lost 3 children in one long winter. No sickness, just the cold. That is all it will take. And still morning comes, and with it the old ways. The fire is made new. The stew is warmed up. The animals are moved and they are fed. Life starts again, sad but very strong. You drink your own share of the broth, which tastes a bit stronger today. Maybe a person slipped in the last small bit of dried meat, or maybe you are just so glad to be awake. You stretch your own limbs, wincing as the blood flows back into the places that had started to get numb. You step outside to relieve yourself in the old pit, shivering the whole entire way. The snow is hard under your foot, and the sky is empty and gray, like some paper, waiting for very bad news. No birds, no sun, just being still and breathing. You do not stay there long. The toilet trench is as hard as it ever was. Back inside, you sit by the hearth and you thaw your own hands. The dog rests there beside you, steaming a little from the warmth of the warm fire. He is snoring with some purpose. You wish you could sleep through all of it. Storms, howling winds, human death of suffering. Your little brother says that he dreamed of the spring again. Fields of some grass, buzzing bees, sun on his face. It is a well-liked fantasy this time of year. Everyone is dreaming of the spring, but not all of them make it there. You give him a crooked smile and you say, "I dreamed of some bread that does not smell of smoke." He laughs, then he coughs. You look around the small cottage and you take a look. The walls are wet once more. The frost is coming back in now that the fire is catching up. The window cover is hard with ice. The stew pot is down to a 1/4 full, but your own sister is alive. The fire is burning now. You are breathing. Here is a fringe fact for you. Some old medieval villagers believed that waking up after the fire was out meant you were saved by a guardian spirit. Others thought it was a clear sign you had more work on earth. Either way, living through a fireless night was more than just luck. It was a kind of strange badge of some honor. You had beat the hard odds, cheated the hard frost, looked at the empty space, and you came back with all your toes in one piece, probably. And here is where the scholars will bicker. Some say that fire management was such a needed part of daily life that whole families were all trained to keep it alive at all of the times. Passing down some tricks like covering hot parts with ash to keep heat over the night. Others think the high death rate in winter shows those ways did not always work. In the truth, it was a mix of some skill of things and just pure being stubborn. Some nights you won and some nights you did not. You start making the next meal. What is left of the root cellar things, a bit of old grain, maybe some herbs. It is not very much, but the trick is to pretend it is. You hum a little as you stir just to keep your mind off of how thin the broth now looks. Your mother gives you a wood spoon and a look that says she is proud of you, or very tired, or both. The fire burns a lot brighter now, the cracking is louder. Light moves on the soot-stained walls and warms the backs of your own hands. You hold them up and you watch the pink come back into your own skin. You are thawing very slowly like something buried too long in the ice. It feels like you are coming back to life. Outside, the wind picks up once more. You hear it whistle through the trees, pushing on the shutters with a half-hearted soft moan. But inside, you have got stew fire and the sound of your sister's breathing. You made it to the morning, and that is not a small thing. Midday BR. Ing's no hot sun, just a brighter kind of gray. You open the house door to find the world outside changed once again. Snow that is higher than your boots. Ice that hangs on the eaves like someone pulled the whole sky through a wash bowl and forgot to wring it out. Everything is frozen. The pail of water left near the door is a solid thing. The wood pile is all buried. The path to the barn, what small bit remains of it, has completely gone. You take one quick look and you know the fields are locked up. Winter has taken the land like a mean man, holding a tight fist over some coins. Your father looks at the skyline, then makes a sound the way men do when they know everything they need to live is now stuck under 2 feet of frost and some wishful thoughts. He leans on his big axe and he mutters, "Nothing grows inside a grave." It is a happy kind of metaphor, but it does fit. The earth is now dead. You feel it in your own feet. Farming has stopped in winter. Not just gotten slower, it has ended. There is no digging, no planting, no pulling weeds. What is all done is done. And if you did not save up enough in fall, well, that is a problem. Right now, the fields that once fed you are nothing but a pale, empty land, wind-blown and so silent. You look out at them and you feel like you are looking at the surface of the moon. You could walk to the middle and just disappear, taken by a big snow pile or just the pure emptiness of it. This very morning, your brother went to the grain shed with some high hopes and he came back shaking his head. Mice again. They have chewed right through another sack, leaving behind some neat little piles of husks and some judgment. You had 6 big sacks in the fall. Now you have got 4 and you are not even half of the way through winter. Your mother said a bad word. Your father became all quiet. And you all stood right there for a few short moments, feeling that deep, shared chill that has nothing to do with any weather. Even the animals are now starting to feel it. The cow's own milk is going away less each day, and the chickens have now stopped laying. Your one last pig spends most of its time all curled in the straw, groaning very softly, likely dreaming of being some other person's problem. You know that kind of look, you have it too. To keep the fire going, you are burning some things that were not meant to be fuel for a fire. The last of the cart's axle, a stool that is broken, your brother's wood toy, the one that is shaped like a fox. You did cry when it went in. You did not stop him. The fire needed it much more. Inside the small cottage, the air smells just like desperation. Or maybe that is just some boiled turnip again. Your mother is working her magic with what is left in the root cellar, turning some thin vegetables into something that pretends to be a real stew. You help her, chopping carrots so very soft they bend before they do break. You toss them into the big pot and do not say a thing when your stomach makes a sound. Everyone hears it, but no one says a word. Hunger is a family thing. Here is a sad little fringe fact. During very, very hard winters, some peasants had to boil tree bark into a soup. Not because it tasted so good, it did not, but because it gave their own stomach something to do. There were also bread loaves that were made from ground acorns, some dried peas, or even some clay mixed with some flour just to make it last. You recall someone in your village doing that last year. The bread broke like sand and made your mouth feel like it owed you an apology. Scholars still talk about how close to no food medieval peasants often came. Some say no food was seasonal, almost known, with lean months in the late winter and early spring called the hungry gap. Others say that clever saving and shared support made it barely livable. Either way, you are living it right now, and there is nothing unreal about the emptiness in your own belly. You look at the stew bubbling on the fire, counting the root pieces like they are gold coins. 1, 2, 3, 4, if you count the one piece that looks like it once was a carrot. You scoop out the shares with mechanical care, knowing every single bite is math. Your father gets some more, he chops some wood. Your sister gets some more, she is still very sick. You take what is now left, it is barely a spoonful, but it is very hot, and you sip it very slowly, pretending it is much richer than it is. Later, you head out to try your own luck with finding food. It is a joke, for real. Nothing will grow now. The ground is too hard to dig for any roots, and the bushes are nothing but bone shapes. You see a few frozen berries still stuck to a branch, wrinkled and so sad, but okay to eat. You scrape lichen off a big tree, too, because someone once told you that you could eat that if you boiled it a lot. You do not know if it is true, but you are ready to test your own luck. You bring it back like it is a treasure. Your mother looks at it, shrugs, and she tosses it into the pot. You take a little break by the side of the field, looking out over the land that once grew some barley, wheat, and some turnips. Now it is a white sheet that is stretched over a dead body. You recall running through it in the summer, chasing the bees and kicking at the dandelions. You recall the color green, but barely. You kick at the snow with your own boot, and you find a few stubborn cut stalks. Dry, dead pieces of last season's time of harvest. You break one off and you turn it between your fingers until it breaks, throwing splinters into the cold wind. Back in the cottage, the stew is boiling once more. Thin, a bit sour, but warm. Then here is where you start to know the cruel joke of the winter. It does not kill you all at one time, it starves you very slowly. It gets into your own gut, your own skin, your own mind. It takes away your food, then your own comfort, then your own joy, and it never says it is sorry, but you are still here. Your family is too, for right now the stew tastes just like nothing. But it is hot and it fills the space where being hungry lives. You made it through another whole day, and with any good luck you will wake to another. The howling starts right after the sun goes down, not the wind this time. It is different, sharper, more alive. It cuts through the quiet of the evening like a sharp knife through some cloth, far away at first, but getting louder, getting nearer with every single breath. It is the kind of sound that will make you freeze where you are. Stew spoon in hand, your heart suddenly tight in your own chest. You look at your own father. His face has become all flat, his eyes fixed on the window like he is trying to see through the frost-covered cloth. He does not say a single thing. He does not need to. You have heard this kind of thing before. Everyone has. It is the wolves. Most of the nights they are just a small worry, a thought on the edge of your mind. You talk about them when the chores are all done and the fire is very low. When you need a thing to blame for chickens that are gone or those goat bones you found that were picked too clean. But tonight they are not a scary story. They are real and they are close and hungry. The animals in the house know it before you do. The cow is now standing, ears moving, eyes wide and very still. The pig, who is usually too lazy to care about very much, is snorting with worry in its corner. Even the old dog, half deaf and fully spoiled, is up on his own feet, his fur up, a low growl shaking through his ribs like a warning bell that is made of fur. Your little brother opens up his mouth to ask a big question, but your mother makes him quiet before the words can get out. Everyone becomes all quiet. Even the stew cooks more with care. Then you hear it once more, closer this time. A long, very low howl that seems to come in through the cracks in the walls, moving into the corners of the small cottage. Then another and another one. It is not just one wolf, it is a whole pack. Your father gets up and grabs the wood axe, not because it is going to help, but because it is the only weapon that you have got. He moves to the door, but your mother grabs his arm. "Do not," she says very quietly. They are not coming for us. Not right now anyway, because here is the real truth. Wolves do not usually come after people, not unless they are very, very hungry, and winter makes everyone very desperate. In years that have passed, they stayed in the forest, hunting for deer and for boars. But now the deer have been long gone, the boars are sleeping or are dead, and the wolves have now come down from the big hills, drawn by the smell of farm animals, of garbage, and of fear. There is some meat in the village somewhere, maybe not very much, but just enough to catch a hungry nose. And here is a sad, fringy truth that does not get told in sweet stories at bedtime. During very, very brutal winters, wolves have attacked some people. Small children taken from the yards, shepherds pulled from their own posts, whole packs coming into villages and taking pigs from their pens before anyone could even scream. It did not happen every single year, but when it did, no one ever forgot. You step far away from the door, your heart beating hard. The sound of claws on hard snow sounds faintly outside. You pull your siblings much closer, sitting near the fire, though it now suddenly feels more for looks than for use. The dog stays by the door, so tense, growling very softly. The cow lets out a worried moo and the pig squeals one time before it becomes all quiet. And then it is nothing. The howls all stop. No movement, no noise, just silence. You all sit right there waiting. Minutes go by, maybe even longer. The silence gets very heavy, like the wolves are holding in their breath too. At last, your father moves away from the door, saying, "They are testing all of us." He throws another log into the fire, and sparks jump right up like they are trying to get away. They're listening, smelling, and deciding. You want to ask him, deciding what, but you already do know. Your mother pulls the blanket tighter around your very sick sister, then she stands and hangs a small bunch of herbs above the door, not for the bad smell, for the charm. Wolves fear fire, yes, but the people fear what makes them come. Hunger, spirit, things. In the old stories, wolves are more than just animals. They are messengers and warnings and bad things. They come when something is very wrong. You wonder what is so wrong now. Some villagers say that wolves can smell a sickness, that they come close to homes where death is already circling. Your eyes look at your sister. She is sleeping very soundly now, breathing slowly and deeply, but her skin still looks so pale. Too pale. You push that thought away. You spend the whole night listening. The fire burns up high, louder than it usually is, as if it knows it is your only wall. No one talks very much. Your brother falls all asleep on your own shoulder, and your mother dozes off in her chair, her head resting on the wall. The dog keeps a watch, his ears twitching, his eyes never leaving the door. At some point in the deep night, you hear a different kind of sound. Crunching of snow, not footsteps, not hooves, but pads, slow, careful, going just past the cottage wall. You hold your own breath. Your heart beats so very hard it feels like it might just give you away. But the sound goes away. No scratching, no gallowing, just fading footsteps. They have gone on their way. Here is where the historians get all split up. Some argue that wolves in medieval Europe were very, very feared, hunted without any mercy, and often made bigger in folk tales. Others believe the fear was not made bigger, that wolves were a real, scary threat, especially in faraway villages during the hard winters. Either way, the stories lived on for many, many centuries. You have heard them your whole life, and tonight they feel very, very real. By the morning, there is no sign of them, only tracks. Paw prints in the snow that go around the livestock pen outside, going away into the woods beyond. The pig looks very shaken. The cow will not stop moving. The dog at last lies down with a very heavy, tired sigh. You make sure the fire stays very strong all day. And when the dust comes back in, you put double the wood on the hearth, light every candle, and you hang another charm near the window. You live through the long night, but the wolves, they are still out there. And the winter is not over yet. It begins with the stool, not the really bad one. You burned that some weeks ago. This one is your mother's, the short little three-legged thing she will sit on when she is peeling some vegetables or shelling some beans. Or more in recent days, staring at the fire and whispering about how many turnips are now left. That is very stool. You find your father now standing over it with an axe in his hand, looking down like it had personally hurt him. You already know what he is thinking now. You knew this very moment was coming. The wood is all gone. Everything that was supposed to be firewood has long ago turned into ash. The cart has been taken down to its very last usable board. The gate is half gone. A corner of the old fence now flaps open like it is a drunken door. Even the big beam from the shed roof, that was a very dramatic day, got cut down and pulled inside after that snowstorm broke down half the old wall. And now it is the furniture's turn. You say nothing as he lifts up the axe and he splits the stool clean into half. One piece for the morning, one for the night. It is not just about staying very warm anymore. It is about just staying. The fire is your safe place in the sea of white, and without it the cottage will become a coffin. You gather the stool's pieces in your own arms, watching small splinters fall behind you on the old floor. Your mother looks up, but she does not say a single word. Her look is calm, far away, like she is now watching someone else's life happening. She just moves her own weight onto the floor and keeps on peeling. Later, your own brother asks if the bed frame is what is next. You tell him it is no. You lie. People talk about living through winter like it is a big test of being strong. But here is the very ugly truth they do not say out loud. Sometimes living means picking what to break, what to give up. And the deeper into winter you will go, the more about you those choices will become. Today it is a small stool. Tomorrow it could be the door, the family's chest, that shelf your own grandfather built. You start to look at everything in the house, not as your furniture, but as food, power, burnable things. You weigh each thing in your own head, how much heat it will make, how long it is going to last. You start to mentally put things in groups as worth saving or as worth burning. Your little bro. There's wood toys were burned last week. The carved spoon set your own aunt gave your mother before she had died probably will be next. It is not about feelings, it is combustion. You burn feelings second, you burn old memories third. Comfort goes out before both. And here is a deeply not nice fringe fact. This was very common, really, really common. When the firewood ran out, peasants would turn to whatever thing could burn. Furniture, some tools, walls, even the roofs. There are some records of families taking out whole roof beams just to make it through the coldest of nights, knowing very well they would pay for it when spring rains did arrive. But they did it anyway, because what was on the other side was worse. Your father's eyes have that empty look right now. Not sadness, just thinking. You see him looking around the room the way a hungry man might look at a table. Not for any food, but for pieces he can eat up with his eyes. You follow his own gaze, and you see the shelf over the hearth might only last a few more days before it will meet the axe. The fire burns very high that evening thanks to the stool, and everyone sits very close, their skin glowing with the kind of warmth that feels like it is a special thing. You almost forget it came at the price of something that used to hold your own dinner. You wrap a blanket around your own shoulders and you let the heat get into your bones, pretending you are not counting some sticks in your head like a worried money keeper. Your sister is still very weak but is getting better. She sits up straight now, pale but awake, holding a bowl of broth like it is something very special. When she looks at you and she smiles, small and crooked and tired, you feel the smallest little flicker of something you almost do not know. Relief. She is getting much better. Which means the fire was worth it. The small stool was worth it. Maybe even the bed frame when that time comes. You are not the only one in your own fear. Every single house in the village has its own rules, its very own habits. Some will not leave shoes near the door, scared they will bring in spirits that walk. Others will not say some names after the sun goes down. You know a woman who will not speak at all during the first hour after the sun sets. Says it keeps all the voices away. You have not heard the voices, but you have felt that silence. It is the kind that will press on your ribs like you are being watched by something that can remember being human. Tonight, as you get ready for your sleep, you check the fire 3 different times. You rake the hot coals, you bank them with great care, and you whisper an old rhyme your grandmother once taught you. You are not sure what the words really mean. They are in old tongues she barely did remember, but the beat is calming, protective. You pull the covers all up and listen to the wind circle the house like it is now looking for a way to come in. The dog growls one time, low and half still asleep. You freeze, then it is silent. You shut your eyes and you press your hand to the charm by your bed. Maybe the wind is just being dramatic, or maybe she is out there, the hag with the frostbitten fingers, waiting to get inside the walls of a cottage where the fire has gone so cold. Not tonight. By morning, the wind has become quiet, but not out of any kindness. No, it is the kind of quiet that feels like the winter is just waiting, watching. You wake with your face pressed against a sibling's own shoulder, and your knees pulled up so very tight to your chest you could pass for a very unhappy hedgehog. The fire is down to some ash and red glowing pieces, barely warm enough to boil a bad thought. You sit up very slowly, squinting at the dim light and stretch until your joints complain like they are rusty hinges. Time to move once more. Breakfast is what you expect. Stew, or at least the watery broth of what was once stew. You sip it very slowly, enjoying the heat more than the real taste, and then it is back into your many layers. Tunic, some overdress, wool socks if you are lucky, some rags if you are not, cloak, a scarf, and gloves that are really just old pieces of fabric with holes that are cut for your thumbs. Your boots go on at the end, and they are still a little wet from yesterday. Of course they are. Today you have been given one of the more needed yet strangely nice jobs of winter survival, the trip to the ale wife. Not for any gossip, not for any joy, for the drink. Because if there is one thing that can cut through the cold and keep your own insides from starting a big mutiny, it is a cup of something warm and a little bit alcoholic. Ale is all around. It is safer than some water, cheaper than some wine, and just strong enough to make you feel better. You do not drink to become drunk. Not usually, not in the daytime at least. You drink because it helps you to stay warm. Or at least it fools your own brain into thinking you are very warm, which honestly feels about the same if you do not think too hard. The alewife lives 3 houses down in a short stone house with a very wide chimney and a never-ending mist of steam moving from under the eaves. Her own name is Mara, and she has the look of a person who looked winter in the face and dared it to blink. Her hands are always red from years of mixing barrels, and her breath always has a faint smell of yeast and of onions. You love her. Everyone does. She greets you with a grunt and a small nod, already pulling a big spoon from a steaming hot pot. The room smells so amazing, malty, and nutty, with just a little hint of something sharp that might be an old apple or being let down. She pours you a little wooden cup of some warm ale and she slides it over the big counter. You wrap your own hands around it like it is a brand new baby. You sip, it burns, so perfect. Ale is not made very strong. It is more like thick bread juice with big ideas above its own station. But it does work. It warms your chest, it settles your stomach, and it gives you the littlest blush of good feelings. Some days it is the one reason your own fingers do not fall off. You take a few more sips, enjoying the way the warmth goes out in your belly like a soft, slow sunrise. Mara looks at you with the kind of look only middle-aged women in charge of drinks can pull off. Equal parts very stern and kind of amused. "You look half frozen," she says softly, ladling another cup for the next sad soul who comes in. You nod, you raise your cup in salute, and you finish it in 2 big gulps. Here is a strange fact. In medieval times, everyone did drink ale. Children, adults, some monks, some nuns. There was some small ale, which was very weak, barely with alcohol, and strong ale, which was saved for more happy or desperate times. In winter, the alewife was as needed as the blacksmith or the person who bakes. She kept the village from being cold, starving, and going fully mad. Some alewives like Mara made theirs with some malted barley and some hops, but in poor areas they became creative. Herbs, dried out fruit, even grain bits from the mill. There was a kind of quiet smarts in the way they made the ingredients last. And yes, sometimes it tasted like someone's feet soaked in some pond water, but you still did drink it because the other choice was cold, and cold was worse than almost anything. You stepped back out into the big wind, your cheeks flushed from both the ale and the heat inside Mara's own shop. The cold smacks you right away like it is mad at your moment of comfort, but your core is very warm now, and that makes all of the difference. You head home very slowly, stopping one time to stomp the snow off your boots and fix the rag around your own neck. The sky is still very gray. The trees are so brittle and bare, but for a minute you feel like you can deal with it. Back at the cottage, your family is gathered close to the hearth, saying words through the morning's jobs. Someone is chopping some root vegetables. Someone else is patching a hole in a sock with a small needle that bends more than it will sew. The dog is licking the inside of a bowl like it is being paid to do it. You add a few sticks to the fire and you sit, letting the embers paint your own skin with their warmth. And here is something history people still talk about, just how drunk were peasants in truth. Some say it was a constant day-long buzz to fight off cold and boredom. Others say that most ale was so very weak it barely did count, more like some tea with dreams of a rebellion. Still, we do know the ale was the main thing. It gave food power, some hydration, and just enough emotional help to get through the average medieval Tuesday. You sip from your refilled cup, now just lukewarm, but still so nice. The warmth has gotten to your fingertips again. Your toes, wrapped in some rags and prayers, are less angry than they usually are. You stretch your legs out toward the fire and you sigh. Outside, the wind growls once more, pulling its claws across the old shutters. You ignore it. You have got your layers, you have got your stew, and you have got your ale. For right now, that is enough. The night is on its way, but you are all ready, or at least you are a little bit tipsy. The fire crackles a bit louder tonight. A rare sign of doing very well in this tiny war, you are always fighting against the cold. Someone must have gotten a few pieces of some good wood. Likely your father, who came back earlier saying something about almost losing a toe and never trusting frozen fences again. Still, you are very grateful. That extra bit of heat will matter because your sister has been coughing for 2 days now, and it is starting to sound very bad. She is curled up on the straw bed near the hearth, wrapped in every blanket the family could find. Her face pale and red all at once, somehow both very frozen and burning. You sit very close, keeping an eye on her, holding a cup of some warm broth. Why? O will probably end up giving to her anyway. No one will say it, but you are all thinking the very same thing. Please, not this winter. Because if you get sick in the middle of the cold time, your own odds start looking very bad. There is no doctor in the village, just an old woman named Hilda who says she knows things about the herbs, about healing, about what the spirits will say. Your mother sent for her this very morning. She came hobbling in around midday, pulling her a bundle of roots and some leaves that smelled like damp ground and not being trusted. Hilda knelt down beside your sister, said some things under her own breath, then brewed a bad smelling mix in a cracked ceramic cup. It looked just like mud, smelled like some boiled socks, and tasted, as said by your brave little brother, as if sadness had a real flavor. But your sister drank it anyway, blinking her tears back. Hilda nodded just once, as if that fixed it, and then she told your parents to keep the fire high, the blankets very thick, and the fear very low. She will get through, she had said, or she will not. Thanks, Hilda. You lean closer to the warm hearth, feeling the heat pulse on your skin. Your sister moves and lets out a rough cough that sounds like it came from the bottom of a deep well. You look toward the others. Your mother pretends not to hear it, focused on mixing the stew. Your father sharpens a knife that does not need to be sharpened. Everyone is pretending everything is just fine. It is not. This is the part of the winter that makes you feel weak. Not just the cold in your own fingers or the ice in your own boots, but the feeling of no help. You cannot fight the wind, you cannot bribe the frost, and when someone becomes sick, there is no hospital, no real medicine, no warm waiting room with some magazines and a grumpy clerk. There is only what you have with you and what you do believe. Hilda left behind a small pouch of dried elderflower and some yarrow root. Your mother has already made some tea with them 2 times. The tea helps a little bit, maybe. Or maybe it is just some warm water and hope. Either way, you make another batch and you offer it to your sister, who sips it with hands that shake and whispers, "It tastes like old broomsticks." You smile and you smooth her hair, pretending you do not see how hot her forehead really is. Here is a strange fringe cure you recall Hilda saying, stuffing some warm onions in someone's socks. Sounds so silly, smells even worse, but it seems it pulls out the fever. She also swears by garlic plasters for chest sickness, mashed into a paste that is smeared on a cloth and strapped right to the skin. You have done it once before. It made your own cousin smell like a big roast, but he did survive. And what do the scholars have to say? They argue, of course. Some believe that the peasant medicine based in herbalism and spoken tradition was much more effective than it gets credit for, especially next to the official medical cures of the time, which had things like bloodletting, some leeches, or wrapping a toad in some linen and wearing it around your own neck. Others think most of the cures were a guess at the best and dangerous nonsense at the worst. But here is the real thing. In winter, you do not have the time for debate. You go with what thing might help. You go with anything. The cottage smells now like some wood smoke. Onions, some damp wool, and something bitter and so sharp from the herbs boiling near the fire. Your sister's breath is rough, but it is steady. That is a real win. The dog sleeps at her feet, and even he seems quieter than he usually is, like he knows this is not the right time for licking the floor or for barking at shadows. You sit through the afternoon feeding the fire with whatever is left in the wood pile and watching the light start to change outside. Snow falls once more, slow and so steady, covering the village in a silence. Every now and then, a distant rooster will crow, confused probably. Roosters have no real idea what is going on in the winter. None of us do. Your brother plays quietly with a piece of carved-up wood, pulling it through the ashes like it is a boat in gray-colored water. Your parents speak in very low voices, talking about if to send someone for more herbs or to wait and see. You just keep on watching your sister's chest rise and fall slow and steady, and try not to count the spaces between her breaths. Another strange old cure you can remember, sleeping with a warm brick wrapped in some cloth under your own blanket. It was supposed to keep your own blood from getting thick with the cold. You wonder if you could heat one on the hearth right now. You would have to dig it out of the floor, but it might just help. You make a thought note. The stew is bubbling once more, thinner than yesterday, but it is hot. Your mother scoops some into the bowls and she passes them around. You take yours and you sip it, trying not to think about how many or meals the pot can give before it is just some flavored water. Tomorrow, someone will have to beg or trade or steal some more vegetables. Maybe you are fast at least and very needy. By the time the night falls, your sister's fever has not gotten worse. She is still pale, still quiet, but the worst of the bad coughs have slowed. You take that as a kind of victory. You bank the fire with great care, you cover her with a second sheep's skin, and you whisper a little rhyme you only half do believe. Then you crawl into your bed, your limbs aching, your heart heavier than usual. Winter is not just about snow and the wind. It is about holding your breath night after night, waiting to see who will make it to morning. Night again and the cold comes in like gossip, going through every crack and corner of the small cottage, whispering mean things to your bones. You wake with a full bladder, of course, and the sad knowledge that your own body has let you down at the very worst possible time. It is totally dark and the fire has gone to glowing red parts. You try to not think about the urge, telling your bladder to hold on just until the morning, but it will not. It never will. So you sigh, you curse softly, and you get yourself ready for what might be the worst part of any medieval peasant's winter routine: going to the toilet. Now the toilet is being very, very generous. There is no indoor bathroom, no chamber pot, unless you count the broken clay bowl your mother will use for stew on special feast days. And even that is now full of some soup. So let us not be so mean. If you are lucky and it is not too cold, you can sneak out and relieve yourself in the chosen spot behind the old shed where snow piles up high and your pride goes to die. You feel around in the dark for your own boots and cloak. Pull them on over your own night shirt and you wince as your feet hit the icy ground. The dog lifts up his head as you move past him, blinks just once, then flops back down. Clearly, he has no plan of joining you. You wish you were him deeply. Oh, you open the door with numb fingers and you step outside into the freezing darkness. The snow reflects the moonlight like it is powdered glass, and for a second it is strangely so beautiful, quiet, and glowing and still. Then the wind hits your own face like an angry hard slap, and you remember just where you are and what you are doing. The path to the latrine is not even half covered. Your boots crunch very loudly with each single step, and you try not to look around too very much. There is something about being all alone at night in the winter that makes every shadow feel very strange. You hear the creak of the tree branches, the distant howl of some animal that sounds much too big to be a cat, and a low whistle of wind that goes into your ear like it is a warning. You get to the toilet spot, which is really just a low pit dug way back in late autumn, now half all frozen and lined with frost like a really bad cupcake. There is a wooden post you can hold onto for your balance if you do trust it, which you do not because the last time your own uncle leaned on it, it broke, and it dumped him into a mess no one talks of anymore. You handle your business as fast as humanly can because the cold has now reached a point where it feels like your inside organs are pulling back. Every second is such agony. And you swear if one more gust of hard wind hits your bare thighs, you are just going to give up and let nature take you. Job is done. You run back toward the house, your heart pounding from the cold and from that strong sense that something could be watching. Is it? Likely not, but maybe. Who can know? It is winter. Reality is a very loose idea. Inside, the warmth, such as it may be, greets you like a friend with some bad breath. You shut the door, you latch it with shaky hands, and you stamp the snow from your own boots. The dog sighs again, mad at the noise. You toss your cloak off and you crawl back into the bed, curling up in the exact same shape of a regret. It takes a long while to fall asleep after that. Your skin is so cold, your feet ache, and your bladder still feels a bit very insulted. You try to focus on the sounds of the room, the slow breathing of your own siblings, the pop now and then from the hearth, the soft moving of the cow in the corner pen. It does help. At last you drift off. And here is where it gets so weird. Some richer homes did have some chamber pots or guard robes, those medieval toilets made into the wall that went outside. Fancy for sure. But most peasants, they just did go outside. Day or night, the summer or the winter. That pit behind the house, that was all. No seats, no roof, no thought for frostbite. You just learned to move very fast, get excellent night vision, and hope you did not step in a thing to be regretted. Here is a fun fringe fact you did not need, but you cannot stop thinking about. In some really cold places, people would use so. Me stones, yes, some stones heated by the fire and wrapped in some cloth. Not just for warming their own beds, but for peeing on a real hot stone toilet. Say what you may want, but that is a new idea born of suffering. Scholars still talk about how often peasants really relieved themselves inside their homes. There is some proof that people did use chamber pots in very cold winters, especially the old ones or the very sick. Others say most peasants did not have a thing even close to that special thing and just made do with the outdoors no matter what the season. What they all agree on is this hygiene in medieval winter. not so great. And speaking of being clean, you are likely now wondering, did people ever clean up after a midnight run to the frost pit? Look, they did try. Snow, some leaves, straw, and moss. You work with what you have got. Sometimes it is clean enough. Sometimes it is just much better than nothing. And honestly, that sums up most of the things in winter. The next warm morning, you wake to the smell of some wood smoke and boiled onion. Your sister is still breathing very steady, which sends a quiet wave of relief through the small cottage. Your brother is already at the hearth mixing the stew, and your mother's hands are red from rubbing yesterday's rags in nearly frozen water. You sit up very slowly, trying to shake the cold right from your joints. Your cloak is still very damp from the nighttime trip, and your boots are very stiff. You say something about needing a much better system. Your father nods, not really caring, and says, "We'll dig a second pit come spring." You both do know that is a lie. Spring is a fantasy right now. The only reality is more of stew, more of snow, and more midnight walks of shame to the toilet trench. Still, you made it through the night. Again, it is a very small win. But in winter, small wins are everything. Morning breaks in the most unwilling way it can, more of a slow changing of the sky than a real sunrise. You blink awake, your own eyelashes crusted with some frost and your lips all cracked. The inside of your nose is so dry it hurts just to take a breath. For a second, you are not totally sure if you are alive. The chill has moved in deep, curling around your own spine like a constant question. Are you still right here? You sit up very slowly, stiff and not awake, and you listen for the known sounds of morning. The fire is now out. Of course it is. Your father is already up, crouched near the warm hearth, poking at the ashes with a stick like he is trying to wake a very stubborn ghost. You can tell from the way his head tilts that it is not going so well. "Dead Mars," he says softly, his eyes still fixed on the cold, gray pieces. You have seen this look before. It is not fear exactly, just deep, tired anger at the whole universe. The thing about fires in the winter is that they are more than just warmth. They are hope and light they pretend to control. When you wake up and you find the fire has gone out all the way, it is like the world has taken a small win against you. You can relight it, sure, but the house will not be warm again for hours. The cold has gotten into everything, your own clothes, your own shoes, even the soup pot, which now has a thin, hard crust of ice across the top. You rub your arms and you walk toward the hearth to help. Your fingers are very clumsy, fumbling with the small kindling as your breath fogs up the air in quick little clouds. Your father adds dried-out moss, straw. Here is a talk among history people. Were peasants really this needy in the winter, or are we making their hard time romantic? Some say that with good planning, getting peat, finding deadfall, trading for some coal, many families did get by. Others point to always-on shortages, very bad weather, and real famine records that show people burned whatever they could just to see the next day. The truth, as it usually is somewhere in the mess. Maybe some families were already ready, but others made it through by burning everything that was not nailed down, and at last some things that were. You reach for the ladle and you stir the stew. It is more water than food right now, but at least it is hot. The dog watches you with one eye open, clearly thinking if the wooden spoon you are holding might be his new chew toy. You give him a nice scratch behind the ears and you toss him a bit of a bread crust. He eats it like it is a big, big meal. That night, your father pulls down the old spinning wheel from the attic. It has not worked in many years. Your mother used to say she would fix it when the spring came. No one talks about that now. You watch as he puts it across the chopping block, lines up the big axe, and he splits it clean. The fire crackles like it is laughing. You lie down with your cloak wrapped so tight, looking at the ceiling and listening to the sound of wood burning that once was your grandmother's. The room glows with orange, warm, and a known feel. The smell of the smoke is thick, but it is nice. It smells just like survival. It smells like home. You close your own eyes. The bed frame makes a noise beneath you. You try not to wonder what it will sound like when it breaks apart under the axe. There is a point in winter when the cold stops being like the weather and starts being like a person. It creeps into your home like a mean relative who stays too long, grumpy, and always a little bit damp. It stops making you surprised. You stop moving when you step into your boots and your toes go all numb in seconds. You stop reacting when your own breath fogs in the air like you are talking to some ghosts. And that is the big danger. The cold wants you to get used to it, which is likely why people start to turn to the less seen kinds of warmth: faith, old beliefs, and magic. The lines between them all get blurry when your fingers are purple and the stew tastes just like sadness. Tonight, the wind is getting up again, not quite howling, but for sure muttering. You look up from the hearth to see your mother standing near the door, her own hands moving in slow, careful ways. She is tracing a sun sign with some chalk on the beam above the door's top, saying words under her own breath. You have seen her do this thing before, but only in the darkest part of the winter. It is a very quiet thing, almost secret, and she never tells you why. But you know the symbol, a wheel, so simple and old with 4 spokes, a soul sign that is meant to call back the sun, or at least to convince it to stop hiding behind the clouds and come do its own job. Your father does not stop her. He does not take part either. He just pokes at the fire and mutters about some dry moss. You know, he does believe, though, in his own special way. They all do. Every home in the village has its own habits. Yours just happened to have herbs above the door and signs scratched into the wood when the cold gets too very bold. Tonight, your mother puts a sprig of dried rosemary on the beam, and she lights a stub of a candle, not from the fire, but from a flint spark. New flame, she says very softly, old light. You sit quietly and you watch the wax melt down the side, making a pool on the shelf where the last of the dried apples used to sit. It smells like some beeswax and smoke and hope. Religious ways blur into folk magic this time of the year. The parish priest gives his sermons about trusting in God's own plan, but even he hangs a braid of garlic over the door in the winter and keeps a candle lit during all snowstorms just in case. Your neighbor swears by St. Bridget's crosses woven from some rushes and hung over the old fireplace. Another family paints white chalk stars on the floor near the big bed. And Hilda, the village healer, has about 7 charms around her neck and at least 3 that are hidden under her cloak. You counted one time. One fringe tradition you have always found very strange, but oddly so nice. Candle magic. Not magic in the big spellbook way, but symbolic. Lighting a candle and speaking a wish out loud as the flame gets bright. It is not about thinking the candle can change your own fate. It is about telling yourself you have a fate to believe in. You tried it one time last winter when your goat went missing. You wished for its own return. The goat came back the next warm morning smelling like it had spent the night drinking with some witches. Coincidence? Maybe. The candle stub still sits right in the corner. You reach into the small bag that is tied to the beam, the one with dried sage, some thyme, and a pinch of salt. Your mother calls it the sleep mix. You scatter a bit into the fire now, and the smoke curls up with a different kind of scent, sharper and cleaner. The room feels less heavy. Maybe it is just psychological. Maybe that is the real point. And here is where scholars get into their arguments again. Some believe that the medieval peasants had a rich, set belief system full of useful habits passed down through the generations. Others think most of it was just scattershot. Local ways, misunderstood saints, half-pagan customs put onto Christian calendars. The truth likely lies somewhere in the hearth's smoke, a blend of desperation, of memory, and whatever you could get your very own hands on. Tonight, you and your siblings help your mother make a little altar close to the hearth. Not a fancy one, just a few very simple things. The candle, a small coin, a bit of some bread, and a twig with the green moss still on it. Symbols of warmth, of wealth, of food, and of spring. You do not expect any miracles, but it helps. It feels like you are doing something. The candle flickers badly as the wind howls again, louder now. Your brother holds the dog, who looks deeply not impressed by this new turn of events. You stare into the flame and you speak your own wish softly, careful not to let anyone hear. Not because it is a secret, but because you are afraid saying it out loud might just jinx it. You wish for one single morning where you can see the sun. That is it, just some light, real light. You look at the window where the frost curls across the cloth just like fingers. The snow outside has piled halfway up the wall right now. You are not even sure where the front path ends anymore, but inside the fire is still steady. The charm above the door now glows faintly with waxy new light, and the room smells just like sage and bread crusts. Your father at last joins you by the hearth, sitting down with a grunt and rubbing his own hands together. He does not say a single thing, but you see he slips the rosemary from the beam into his coat's pocket, just for some luck, probably, or just for some warmth. Later, as you curl into the bed box with your own siblings, you see the candle stub still moving on the hearth. It is almost out, but not quite. Your mother lets it burn all down on its own, never snuffing it. Let the wish go out on its own, she once had said. It will find its own way. You fall asleep to the smell of some herbs and wax and woods. You dream of fire that never dies, of sunlight that melts all the snow, and of saints and spirits passing through your cottage, nodding quietly at the symbols above your own door before stepping back into the dark. You wake in the night once and you swear you see the candle flame move, just a little, like it is dancing for someone else. And you do not feel quite as cold. You have never quite trusted the dark hours between midnight and dawn. They are so slippery, more dream than real time. The fire drops very low, the wind changes its direction, and the walls of the cottage feel less like a safe home and more like a hollow shell held up in frost. You lie awake in the bed box, pushed between your brother's knees and your sister's hard cough, and you listen to the soft crackle of the hearth. You are not sure if you are asleep or just very, very still. Then your eyes will open and everything feels so wrong. Not in a scary kind of way, not like the wolves are back, just wrong in the way that a room feels after someone has come in and left without touching a thing. You look at the window, still very dark but not black, the kind of soft gray that means it is nearly morning. You stare at the ceiling and you know once again that you have woken in the middle of the night again. And you are not alone. Your father is already mixing the fire. Your mother is sitting beside him, her head wrapped in a big shawl, hands holding a warm cup. They are not talking, just sitting awake like it is the most normal thing in the whole world, and strangely it is. Because in this very house and in others like it, you do not always sleep straight on through. In fact, you hardly ever do. Winter has its very own rhythm, one you have gotten into without ever knowing it. A pattern of a first sleep and a second sleep. You crawl out of the bed box and you tiptoe to the hearth, putting a blanket around your own shoulders. The heat feels very different in these hours, more close, less a shield against the cold and more of a good companion. Your father nods at you, not at all surprised you are awake. He hands you a half mug of some warm ale. Good timing, he says softly. He says it is a normal time to be up because it is. First sleep starts not long after the sun goes down, especially in the winter when the darkness comes before supper is all done. Everyone falls into bed very early, worn out by chores, by cold, and by thin stew. But somewhere in the middle of the dark night, the house moves, eyes will open, limbs stretch, and people rise. Not to start the day, just to exist and to sit and to think and to be. This watching hour, as some of the folks call it, is when your mother mends the clothes. Your father checks on the animals. Sometimes they will talk quietly, sometimes they do not. You have heard them laugh in this hour, share the stories they do not tell in the daylight. The kind you only tell when the wind is shaking the roof and the rest of the world is now asleep. Tonight, you just sit there with them. You do not say a single thing. You sip your own drink and you let the warmth get into your own bones. The firelight moves on the walls and the dog stretches out at your feet, groaning like the floor hurt him personally. This split sleep thing is not just your own family being very strange. It is a real rhythm, natural. In fact, some historians say medieval folks often broke their own sleep into two parts. First sleep, which began shortly after the nightfall, and the second sleep, which started up again in the early morning hours. In between, there was this in-between space, a twilight kind of wakefulness. People used it to say prayers, read, stoke the fires, or talk. Some even went to see neighbors. If the moonlight was so good and the snow was not too deep, think of trudging through a frozen village at 2 in the morning just to borrow a sharp needle or hear the latest news. Rs used the time for, let us just call it, married closeness. Your parents do not talk about that one part, thank all the saints. You stretch your legs out toward the fire and you look at your sister, still asleep in the bed box. Her fever has not come back. Her skin looks less like a ghost. That at least feels like a kind of win. Your mother hums softly to herself as she threads a long needle and begins to stitch a torn-up sleeve. Her fingers move with the kind of grace that will come from repetition, not from joy. You watch her for a short while, lost in the rhythm, the fire, the strange quiet of the house. And then, just as naturally as it all began, the second wave of sleep comes back. You feel it roll in like a soft, gray fog pulling at your eyelids, curling around your own spine. You finish the ale, now just lukewarm, and you set the mug down. Your father throws another stick into the fire and he nods toward the bed. No words, just a shared knowing. The hour has all passed. The night is closing its second hand. You climb back into the bed box, moving yourself in the small real estate between your siblings. The straw makes a noise beneath you, and the wool itches your own neck, but you are already fading. The warmth from the hearth still hangs on, caught in your own cloak and fingers. You close your own eyes and do not open them once more until the sky is lighter, and the rooster, confused as he ever is, begins its off-key calling from somewhere near the frozen coop. When you rise again, it is with a strange kind of balance, like you have lived 2 nights in one. And maybe in a way you have. Here is the fringe bit that never gets taught in all history lessons. Some monks and the scholars use the watching hour to do their writing. The hours between the sleeps were said to be so clear and peaceful, even blessed. Your own thoughts were not cluttered just yet. Your body was not feeling burdened. Ideas came much easier. Some thought it was a very sacred time, a whisper between the chaos of all the days, a pause in the big noise. You do not know about being sacred, but you do know that this morning feels much quieter, softer. The fire is already all lit. The house smells like something that is almost edible. Your sister smiles when you give her her cup. Your mother's old shawl is still draped on her shoulders. You nod at your father and he nods right back. There is still the cold, still snow, still the hunger. But there was also a moment somewhere between the sleeps where the world did not feel like it was trying to kill you. And sometimes that is enough to get through the next day. The stew is bubbling again and you are starting to hate it. You try not to. It has done so much for you, warmed your own stomach, kept your insides moving, and given your fingers something to hold. But now just the smell of it, onion and root veg, maybe a hint of last week's pigeon bone, makes your stomach twist in protest. You stare into your own bowl and you think of a different life, one with some meat that is not gray, with bread that does not need to be soaked in some broth just to chew, with some flavor. You look at your brother who is poking at his own spoon like he is doing surgery on something not so nice. "How is yours?" you ask him. He just shrugs. "Hot," he will say. It is the best anyone can say. Later, you lean over the hearth, spilling a bit of stew into the hot coals by mistake. It hisses and it steams. The scent that will come off it is not so bad, but it is known in the very worst way. It stays on your skin, your own cloak, even your own dreams. There is no getting away. And in that moment, as the firelight moves off the iron pot and the room fills with another blast of wood smoke and boiled root, you think, I miss having some taste buds. But the stew is just the very beginning. The real bad trick comes later when you try to chew a crust of old bread and you feel a sharp pain in your jaw. You stop, chew once more. There it is. a sudden, blinding ache from the very back of your mouth. You check it with your tongue softly at first, then with growing fear. Yep, that tooth is angry, and now you have a new thing to add to the growing list of medieval winter woes. A toothache. You do not scream, but you do make a noise that sounds a lot like someone softly being punched in the face. Your mother looks up right away, alert. "Tooth," she will ask. You nod your head grimly, still feeling the hurting spot. She sighs, sets down her needlework, and she starts looking through her basket of herbal wonders or disappointments. Let us talk about old medieval dental care. Ready? There is not any. Not unless you count washing your mouth with some vinegar, chewing on mint, or stuffing a wad of soft moss into your cheek and hoping for a miracle. Teeth are a fancy thing here. If you are old and you still have most of them, you are a walking miracle. If you are young and you are already missing a few, well, join the whole club. The bad guy in your case is likely rot brought on by too many old grains and not enough of anything else. Maybe a broken tooth from biting into a crust that was not soaked. Maybe just some bad luck. Whatever the reason is here now, pulsing in a beat with your own heartbeat. Your mother gives you a thick paste she has mashed up from cloves and some wine. Hold it right there, she says, putting the bundle into your own palm. Do not swallow it. It is not for eating. As if you were at all tempted, you put on the mash and you wait. The clove numbs your own tongue first, then the side of your throat, then at last, blessedly, the bad tooth. It is not all gone, but it is not so sharp. Like the pain has been wrapped up and told to be quiet. You lean back against the wall and you let your jaw hang open a little, hoping the air will help. Here is a delightful fringe detail. Some people in your own village believe that a big toothache is caused by tiny unseen worms that will crawl inside and chew away from within. You know it is silly, probably, but when your jaw is hurting and your whole head feels like it is trying to boil from the inside out, the idea of tiny evil worms starts to sound oddly real. And here is where the scholars come in. Bless them. They argue without end over if medieval people really believed in tooth worms. Some evidence shows they did. There are some pictures, some poems, even some tools said to be used to pull the worms out. Others say that the worm idea was symbolic, not real, a metaphor for the rot and the pain that came from inside. Either way, no one had a real solution. If your tooth got bad enough, the choices were not many. Option 1, to suffer. Option 2, Hilda. Yes, Hilda. Again, she is not a real dentist. No one is. But she has a set of big pliers and the kind of sad smile that makes you right away regret walking through her old door. People say she can pull a pain right out of your own skull, which sounds very nice until you see it means exactly what it sounds like. One big yank, one scream, one less tooth in your own face. You are not there just yet, not tonight. For right now the clove paste is holding on barely. As the day goes on, you keep to softer foods. Thick broth, some bits of porridge, a very sad boiled turnip. You do not chew on the bad side, which turns your meal time into a frustrating one-sided fight. The dog watches you the whole entire time with that judging look he saves for any weakness. You glare at him and he just yawns. The cold does not help, of course. Cold air gets in through the cracks, wraps all around your face like a wet rag, and makes the ache come back with every sharp breath. You tie a wool scarf around your own mouth, which helps a little, though it also makes you look like a very sick bandit. You try not to complain. Your sister is still getting better from her fever, and your brother sliced his hand open on a frozen hinge yesterday. Everyone is hurting. You do not get special care just because one of your own teeth is throwing a big tantrum. That night, your mother makes another plaster. This one with some sage, a dash of some salt, and a bit of something that smells very much like wood paint. You are too tired to argue. You hold it on your cheek and you listen to the wind outside. Another long and cold night. Another round of not sleeping well, but at least you are warm, kind of, and the pain is less right now. Or maybe your brain is just giving up. You dream of biting into a loaf of warm bread so fresh and soft, full of butter and all joy. You wake up chewing on your blanket. The fire is still on, the stew is still hot. The tooth still hurts, but you are alive, for now. You wake to stillness, not the quiet. The wind is still making a sound like it has got a big grudge, but a stillness inside of the house. The kind that will press against your own ears and makes you listen much harder. No coughing, no moving, no words from your own father. The fire is out again, and the room is lit only by the sad gray light coming through the frozen window cover. You sit up very slowly, your heart already fast, as if your body knows a thing before your brain does. Your sister is not in the bed box. The blanket she was sleeping under is crumpled, still warm to the touch. You get up and you look toward the hearth, where the last hot coals are nothing but ash. You see your mother kneeling close to the fire, her arms around your sister's small body, rocking very softly. For a second you stop breathing, then she will move, just her hand, a small twitch, small, but she is alive, barely. Your mother looks up, her eyes rimmed with red, and she says one word, fever. It is now back. The good feeling that had settled into your bones over the last few days goes away like steam off the snow bank. That feeling that maybe the worst was over, that maybe your own sister would get better, and the stew would last, and spring would come before you had to burn the bed. Posts gone, she is very hot. Her skin is red and blotchy and too dry. She says things under her own breath, names and places, nothing that makes any sense. Your father sends your brother running all across the village for Hilda, his own boots kicking up snow just like smoke. You do not know if she will come. You do not know if it will even matter. You find yourself saying prayers you do not remember learning. Your own breath freezing in the air as the words will leave your lips. And the cold does not even care. Outside, the snow is much thicker than ever. You can barely see the edge of the trees from the small window. The sky is a dirty gray blanket, too heavy and so close, pressing down on the whole world like it is a bad thought. You stand by the door, looking at the drift that is piled halfway up the door's bottom, and wonder how many more days this will go on. Because sometimes the winter just does not ever stop. There are stories, you have heard them, of winters that go very deep into the spring. Crops that are frozen in the ground, animals that are starving in their pens, whole villages going silent one house at a time. You recall one story from the last market day before the snow had come. An old man from 3 towns away, wrapped in some furs and regret, telling anyone who would listen about the year that had no summer. Said he lived through it when he was a boy, and said the sun went away behind clouds that never moved and nothing grew. People chewed on bark and boiled leather. He swore the birds did not even sing. Some say it was just a very bad year. Others say it was a punishment from God or otherwise. Still others talk softly about volcanoes far away that put so much ash into the air it turned the sky against the whole earth. You do not know what to believe, but you know this. You have never seen a winter that is like this one. Your sister moans very softly, and your mother dabs her face with a cloth dipped in some snow melt. No one has the strength to boil some water just now, so you use what is on hand. The cloth freezes between the soaks. You take your turns warming it near the fire. Your father builds it up again, using the last of the pantry's shelf. The pot makes a noise as it crashes into the flames. It breaks apart like a small kindling. You do not say anything. Your brother comes back an hour later, his face white from the wind, his eyes streaming. She is on her way, he gasps, but she is slow and the snow is too deep. You nod and you thank him, but you already know that Hilda might not make it in time. As you wait, you get ready for everything you have ever seen your mother do during a bad fever. You mix up the clove paste. You rub her chest with a strong blend of garlic and some goose fat. You tie strips of cool cloth all around her wrists and her ankles. Someone says a prayer every 10 minutes just to feel like they are doing something. And here is the very strange part. In the very worst moment, the house gets warmer. Not from the hot fire, from the movement, from the breath and hard work and sheer not wanting to let go. You are all too tired to feel scared, too cold to scream, too stubborn to give up trying. It is what winter needs. Not being brave, not hero acts, just being strong. Fun fringe fact: in some of the regions, when a fever ran too very hot, people believed you could pull it out with a fire. They would heat a big rock in the hearth, wrap it in some linen, and place it near the feet, hoping the warmth would pull the sickness down and out. You do it now. Not because you think that it will work, but because doing something is better than sitting still. And the scholars, they argue a lot about the science or no science behind medieval fever cures. Some say that herbalism saved many lives. Others dismiss it all as old beliefs and placebo, but ask anyone who has watched a child shiver through a night while snow piled up high against the door, and they will tell you belief is a real tool. Like some firewood, like some broth, like some hope. You use what you have. Night falls once more. Hilda arrives just before the dark, panting and with wild eyes, covered in snow from her head to heel. She does not talk, just drops her bag and gets right to work. More garlic, more salves, a bad-smelling syrup. Your sister barely is able to swallow. She says something in a language you do not understand, and she lights a second candle, putting it in the window facing to the east. Your mother closes her eyes and does the same. It is past midnight when the fever breaks. Your sister's breathing evens out. Her hands go from red to pink to so cool. The muttering all stops. The sweat begins. Real sweat, not the cold kind. And you all breathe out at the same time like you have just been let up from underwater. You do not celebrate, not right now, but you sleep a little deeper that night, because winter nearly took someone, but this time you held on tighter. The morning after the fever breaks feels almost so special. No choir of angels or a golden sunrise, just a quiet, good sort of peace, like the house itself has taken a breath it had been holding all of the winter. You open your eyes to find the fire still making a noise, the air a bit warmer, the quietness less so tense. Your mother is asleep in the chair by the hearth, her own head tilted back, mouth open, snoring just a little. You do not even have the heart to make fun of her. She has earned it. Your sister, curled up in a nest of soft blankets, is at last resting like a person, not a haunted doll. Her skin is very damp, but no longer flushed, and she no longer shivers or mutters. You kneel down beside her for a long minute, watching her own chest rise and fall. It is the most beautiful thing you have seen in weeks. And then, for the first time in what feels like many months, someone will say, "Let's eat." Not stew, not any broth, not chewable regret floating in hot water. Real food, okay, not real in the royal banquet sense. No roast pig or pies here, but something very different, something that smells like a good plan. Your father has gathered the last of the flour and he mixed it with melted snow, a pinch of some salt, and the smallest little drizzle of the honey saved since late in the summer. It is barely enough to cover up your palm, but it is going in the hot pan. "Feast day," he says with a very crooked grin, his eyes full of being tired and something dangerously close to real joy. It is not an official feast day on the church's calendar. There are no saints with it. It is just that after weeks of just getting by, someone felt strong enough to try, to celebrate, to tell everyone that being alive is still a thing worth honoring. He drops a lump of the dough onto the hot iron pan, and it hisses right away, the sound like applause in a small way. You all lean forward as it cooks, your heads tilted like they are curious birds. Even the dog's ears perk up, and he sits much taller, his tail thumping the dirt floor like a timekeeper of hope. The smell spreads very fast, sweet and warm, slightly burnt on the very edges, and it fills the cottage with something that is close to comfort. Your brother really laughs when the first flat cake hits the old plate. Your sister, with blurry eyes, manages a soft whisper. "Is that for me?" And of course it is. She gets the very first bite, which she chews very slowly with care, like a priest taking some communion. You think she might just cry. You kind of want to cry too. Then it is your own turn. You get a piece no bigger than your hand, but when you bite into it, it is just heaven. Warm and soft in the middle, very crisp at the edges, with just a hint of sweetness that makes you think dangerously about some fruit. Your mouth can remember the flavor, and it is almost too much. This is more than some food. It is proof that there is still something left, that you have not burned it all or eaten it all or lost it all. Feasting in the winter is very rare but not impossible. Even peasants made some time for it, especially when their spirits were low. You did not need a whole pig or barrels of ale to call it a big feast. Sometimes all it took was doing a thing on purpose, making a thing special from the scraps. A flat cake, a hot kind of drink, a little bit of music, if someone still had fingers nimble enough to play. And that is just what happens. Your mother, newly awake and blinking like a cave person pulled into the daylight, pulls out the old bone flute your sister made last year. It is a simple thing made from a goose's wing and a lot of overfeeling, sure, but it makes a sound, kind of. She plays a few notes, shaky, off-key, but known, and suddenly the room has a beat. Your brother starts to tap on the turned-over cooking pot. Your father claps along and the dog barks in some confusion. You sit back, full of some cake and around music that would not pass muster anywhere else, and for a few short minutes you feel full. Really, really full, not just in your belly, in your own chest. Outside, the snow still does fall. The wind still pulls at the eaves, but inside, a thing has changed. You have reclaimed a little bit of joy. You have taken back some space from winter. Here is a strange fringe fact. In some of the villages, it was seen as bad luck not to feast after living through a sickness. They thought you had to mark the escape, to thank whatever spirits or saints or just dumb luck carried you right through. If you did not, it might come back or worse, take someone else. So even if you had nothing, you made something. A crust of bread shaped like a heart, a bit of soup mixed with widdershins, a candle lit at dusk. Survival was not just survival, it had to be seen. Scholars sometimes dismiss these old traditions as quaint or made up. But when you are living it, when you have watched a fever pull someone to the edge and then barely let them go, it does not feel so silly. It feels needed. Later that day, you and your brother brave the outside for some more firewood. The wind is worse than before, but you walk with a different kind of energy now, the kind that comes from winning a round. You find a few good branches near the tree line and you drag them back with a win. Your hands go numb, your cheeks do sting, but you are grinning like a fool the whole entire way. Back at the cottage, your sister is sitting upright for the first time in many days, wrapped in enough blankets to look like a very judging turnip. She smiles when she sees the new wood. Your father lights the fire higher than it usually is. Your mother hums a tune you do not know. That night, instead of stew, you have some gruel, which does not sound like an upgrade, but it is so different. Oats, some water, a pinch of some salt, and this is the big one, a spoonful of dried apple stirred in for some flavor. It is lumpy and it is weird and kind of gray, but it tastes just like triumph. Afterward, you all sit around the fire, too full to sleep and too tired to talk. The wind rattles the old shutters, but the house does not feel in danger anymore. It feels held. You made it through the very worst, you think, and even if more bad nights are on their way, tonight is a good one. You fall asleep with warmth in your belly, music in your ears, and the taste of honey still staying on your tongue. Kids do not really know the cold the way adults do. Sure, they can feel it. They shiver and complain, and their fingers go all red and raw, just like your own. But they do not get it, not in truth, not the way it stays in your joints or seeps into your own hope. For the children, cold is for a short time. It is just the cost you pay for running outside to chase a chicken or to slide down a frozen hill on a broken old board. For adults, it is a thing much heavier, a weight, a big threat, a presence that will not go away even when the fire is roaring. Still, the kids in your own household somehow manage to make out moments of play in the coldest corners of the season. Your little brother, his cheeks bright with windburn, spent half the morning turning some lumps of icy mud into an army of what he says are guard pigs to save the wood pile from the wolves. He even gave them tiny little bark helmets. Your sister, at last awake and almost well after her close call with the fever, watched from inside, her eyes tired but smiling as he told of their heroic fight against foes he made up. It is almost so silly, this defiance. This readiness to pretend in the face of such a clearly unfriendly world. But that is childhood, is it not? Making magic out of misery. You recall doing it, too. Building snow forts with some rotten wood, sledding down the root cellar's frozen hill, eating icicles off of the roof, and pretending they were royal meals. You did not know then that the roof was leaking, that the bread was running low, that your mother was deciding if she could stretch the meat one more day. Kids were not spared the cold, but they were spared the meaning of it. And still, winter did not ignore them. You remember last year when a neighbor's own child, a boy no older than your brother, did not wake up after a very, very bitter night. No fever, no wolves, just the cold. You remember the silence that came after in that house. How the mother moved through her chores like her limbs were made of gray smoke. The fire was never quite the same there after that. So even though your siblings will laugh and build guard pigs and make up some songs about stealing honey from some bees in the afterlife, you still watch them with a quiet worry. You check their fingers, their noses, their breath in the morning. You make sure they will eat something, even if it is just some hot broth. You make sure their own cloaks are patched and their boots are filled with hay. And when they are not looking, you add another log to the fire, even if it is meant for tomorrow. Children lived through medieval winters by being kept safe. Not by the walls, those were weak and so cold, but by the people. Layer after layer of care from tired hands who had seen too many bad seasons to pretend they did not. Babies were wrapped and put under cloaks. Toddlers slept between the adults like living fire sticks. Older children shared the bed box and sometimes did not even get their very own blanket, just shared body heat and their dreams. You recall being small and sleeping under the same fur as your own cousins. There were 8 of you in one single bed, and you did not complain because that many bodies in one space meant you might really keep your own nose warm. You recall playing Ice Ghost under the blankets, pretending to haunt your siblings until they begged you to stop, then they begged you to start again. And here is a bittersweet fringe fact. In some of the households, children were sent to sleep in the barns on really cold nights, not as a bad thing, but because it was much warmer. Packed hay, warm animals, and smaller spaces meant less heat being lost. If the cow did like you, you could sleep pressed right up against its belly. Gross maybe, but it was cozy. Today, your brother asks if he can sleep by the hearth, not in the bed, just near the fire, curled in a pile of blankets like a dog. You let him. He has earned it after watching the yard all morning with his bark-covered pigs. He falls asleep very quickly, his head on a stack of rags, his mouth open, snoring very softly. Your sister does not play much yet, but she does watch. That is enough. She holds a carved button in her own lap, her only real toy, and she rolls it between her own fingers, whispering to it like it is listening. You do not ask her what she is saying. Some magic should not be stopped. And here is where the scholars argue again. Some say medieval children were treated like many adults, put to work young, given few chances to play, burdened early with staying alive. Others say the opposite, that children were loved and kept safe fiercely even in poverty. That play and laughter were needed distractions in a world that offered few. Based on what you have seen, both of them are true. Your brother still helps gather up wood. Your sister still tries to stir the stew when she has the strength. But they are allowed some joy too. They are allowed to throw some snowballs, to sing very badly, to believe their stuffed goose, really just a sack with feathers, has a name and some feelings. You fall asleep that night to the sound of your brother whispering a story to the dog. Something about a prince who lives in a well and only comes out when the snow has melted. The dog does not understand, but he wags his tail anyway. And for a moment, the cottage does not feel like a trap or a coffin. It feels like a world where children still have their dreams. And as long as they do, so do you. The change is so very small at first, you almost do not see it. You are outside early getting what little firewood you and your brother were able to dry under the lean-to. The air still nips your face and turns your own breath into some mist, but something is off. Not in a bad kind of way, just so different. You stand still for a short second, your brow bent, staring up at the sky. And then you get it. It is the light, and there is more of it. Not much, just a few extra minutes, a small sliver of brightness, barely wider than a sigh. But it is there, very real. The sky is not quite so leaden today. The clouds look much higher, thinner. The sun, though still pale and a bit watery, hangs on just a touch longer before it dips behind the trees. You blink and you check again, squinting like it is a trick. But no, it really is lasting longer. The sun, the light, the day. You drop your big armload of sticks and you rush back inside, coming through the door with all the drama of someone who came back from a holy sight. It's longer, you gasp. The day. It is longer. Your father raises an eyebrow, not impressed. That is how the seasons work, he says, straight-faced. But your mother turns toward the window, squinting just as you did. Her lips will twitch. Not quite a smile, but so close. I noticed, she says very softly yesterday. Didn't want to jinx it. Your sister does not say a single thing. She is sitting in her normal spot, too wrapped in blankets to move much. But she closes her eyes, and you can tell she is picturing it. Sun lasting longer, the world slowly opening up. After weeks of unending gray, it feels like a whisper from the earth. I am still here. These early signs of the spring are never dramatic. No blooming flowers, no sudden warmth, just very tiny hints. A slow drip from the eaves as the icicles get smaller. A bit of green poking through the snow near the door's bottom. The way the birds start to sound like they might be getting warm for a proper show. Not singing just yet, just clearing their little throats. You check the barn later and you notice something else. The cow is less so cranky. Still cold, still not impressed by life, but there is a little more power in her steps. She tosses her head when you come in like she might remember what the grass feels like. You refill her water and you rub her nose. Her breath makes steam in the air, and for the very first time it does not right away freeze to your own cloak. Even the pig snorts with more excitement than usual, which could just be his gas, but you are taking it as a very good sign. That night your family gets together around the fire like always, but the mood is so different. You are still hungry. Yes, still sore and very tired, but there is an edge of something else right now. A low hum beneath the quiet, a readiness. Your mother pulls out the little seed pouch, not to plant, not just yet, but to count, to check on. She runs her own fingers through the tiny treasures like a seller counting coins. Beans, some barley, cabbage seed, a few special carrot cores wrapped up in cloth. They will need to go in a. As soon as the ground gets softer, she says softly, more to herself than anyone else. Your father nods, already half thinking about which patch of the field will thaw the first. Your brother asks if the bees are dead. You do not know the answer. No one does, but your mother says, we will find out very soon. Here is a fringe detail you have always liked. In some of the villages, people swore they could smell spring before they saw it. Not the flowers or grass, just the scent of soft earth, like the world's own breath had changed. Some even said they dreamed of green fields before they did sprout. You never put much faith in it. But tonight, as you sit near the fire with your cloak wrapped so tight and your belly just barely so full, you realize you do smell something. It is not stew. It is not some smoke. It is mud barely there, I promise. You tell your sister and she laughs weakly and then she says, I dreamed of some rain. And that is enough to make everyone stop and look at her because dreaming of rain in the very heart of winter is the closest thing to a vision any of you have. And here is where the historians love to argue. Some believe medieval people marked the changing seasons with great care, tracking solstices, planting days, cycles of the moon. Others say peasants mostly went by their feel, by bird songs, by the way the frost did crack, by gut feeling. You do not have a calendar hanging on the wall, but you do know what today is. Today is almost spring. Almost. You go to bed that night, still bundled up tight, but with your hand resting near the window's own edge where the cloth is thinner. You want to feel the shift. You want to be the first to see when the air changes for real. Your sleep is very deep, the kind of sleep that comes after weeks of waking at every single sound. And in your own dreams, the snow goes away, the fields bloom, and you walk barefoot through a patch of mud that will squish between your toes. You wake up smiling. The frost is still on the walls. The fire needs some tending, but the sun rises just a bit higher today, and you are already counting the minutes. It has been 87 days since the frost first sealed your door all shut. Not that anyone is counting by the book. You do not have a calendar written on the wall or knots that are tied in twine, but in your own bones you do know. Winter's hold has been long and hard and not forgiving. And yet here you are, sitting on the log by the doorway, your hands warmed by the morning's fire, watching a single drop of water trace its way down from the straw-covered roof and splash into the dirt like it is a real miracle. Because honestly, it is. The roof is dripping, not leaking, just melting. One drip becomes two, then it is four, then a slow, steady rhythm like nature trying to hum. You run your own fingers over the wooden door's top and feel some wetness. You do not pull back, you smile. A month ago, that would have meant some mold or rot or a roof about to fall down. Now it means the sun is doing its own job again. Inside, your mother hums as she stirs the big pot. Not stew today, but something much thinner, more hopeful, if that will make sense. A broth made from a small sprig of early greens she found pushing up through the frost near the chicken's coop. It is barely more than colored up water, but the taste is very clear fresh. After weeks of salt and smoke and sour, that tiny little taste of something alive sends a small jolt through your whole entire body. Your father is sharpening his tools. Not because there is work to do today, there is not, but because he is getting ready. Because you do not sharpen blades in the winter, unless you do believe spring is close enough to need them. The hoe, the spade, the shears that have not seen a growing thing since the very last harvest. All in a line, oiled, shining in the fire's light like it is a promise. Your brother is outside kicking snow melt down the old path, carving small rivers through the slush, and pretending he is making canals for some fairy boats. The dog watches, his tail half wagging, no longer curled up on himself like a frozen loaf of bread. Even he seems to know that something has really shifted. And your sister sits near the hearth with her own sleeves rolled up, sorting lentils one by one into a pot with a focus usually saved for a prayer. Her fever is all gone. Her color is now back, and her voice has started coming back in small, matter-of-fact phrases. Today, she says, if I see another boiled root, I am running away. You do not laugh, you just nod because honestly, same. The house still makes a noise. The wind still taps on the shutters, but it no longer howls with its teeth. It whistles now, still cold but losing its own edge. And when you walk outside to check on the livestock, you notice it is something you have not seen in many weeks. Mud, real soft and squishy mud. Your boot sinks in halfway before you curse and you nearly fall, but instead of swearing, you just grin because that is how it will start. First the thaw, then the flood, then the green. A few of the hens have started laying once more. Only 1 or 2 eggs every few days, and half are frozen solid before anyone can get them, but still eggs. The cow's own milk has gone from sad to just underwhelming. The pig grunts more than he will wheeze. Everything is moving in that slow early spring way. Not very fast, not reliable, but it is forward. Your mother even lit a second candle last night. For luck, she had said, and for some light. No one argued. You do not really throw open the doors and declare a win over the winter. That would be playing with fate. And winter, a spiteful old thing that it is, might decide to dump a blizzard on your head just for some fun. But even the old folks in the village, the ones who always mutter about just one more cold spell before the lambs do arrive, are talking about planting, about some digging, about going outside. And when the priest walks through the village today, his robes damp and beard all frosted, he is not offering prayers for survival. He is blessing some seeds. Seeds. You watch as he presses his wrinkly hands over a basket of barley seeds and says something in Latin, then he grins. He actually grins and says, "If the mice did not get them all, you might eat well this year." Everyone does laugh, real laughter, not the dry, bitter kind you had heard in January, but something from the belly. Even the cows look a little amused. You help patch the roof this afternoon, climbing up on creaky old beams and stuffing fresh straw between the old straw to keep the coming rains out. The snow will slide off in fat, wet pieces, landing with sloppy splats in the yard down below. You do not mind. You will take wet and messy over cold and dead any day. At one point, you sit up there, your hands muddy, boots all soaked, and you just look around. The village is waking up. Smoke moves from more chimneys, doors are open, chickens will squawk. Somewhere, someone is hammering, likely mending a sled into a wheelbarrow. And for the first time in a very, very long time, no one looks like they are trying to vanish into their very own coats. It is not warm exactly, but it is not hopeless. And here is something the historians rarely will mention. No one celebrated living through winter, not for real. There were no parades or ceremonies or any holidays, but that does not mean it was not noticed. People did paint their doors, sweep their hearths, sing louder, and eat better, even if better just meant one single egg and a cup of fresh greens. They did notice, because getting through winter was not just an annual habit. It was a big achievement, a bet with death that this year you did happen to win, so you sit on the roof a bit more. Let the chill wind slap your own cheeks and the watery sun look down at you. You run a hand along the patchy old thatch and you mutter a thank you to it, even though it did not always do its own job. Your sister waves from below. You are going to fall, she will call. You wave right back. If I do, aim me at the pig pen. Even she will laugh. You climb on down, your muscles aching in a good way for once. And as the sun will sink behind the trees later than it did yesterday, you light the evening's fire. Not to fight off any despair, but just to be comfy. The cold is still here, but so are you. You made it, all of you did. And now, as the last embers settle in the hearth and your family curls into their warm beds, something at last shifts. Not in the walls or the weather, but inside you. The fear that sat on your chest all winter has gone up. Not all at one time, but so slowly, like a blanket being pulled back in some layers. You are still tired, still hungry, but you are also alive, and that will count for something. Tomorrow will bring more of work. The fields need to be cleared, the tools need sharpening, and there are still some repairs to make before spring fully will bloom. But that is tomorrow. Tonight, you sit with your back to the warm stones, your hands resting in your lap, listening to the soft, even breathing of your siblings and the quiet ticking of the cooling up firewood. No wolves scratching at the walls, no fever moans, no midnight crisis, just stillness. And the kind that does not feel like death this time, but like it is rest. You stare up at the low ceiling, and you realize for the very first time in a long while that you have stopped counting how many days until the snow melts. You have stopped measuring your life by the inches of wood left in the stack. You have stopped being ready. Spring is not here just yet, but you know it is coming and you are ready. You smile a little in the dark and you pull your blanket tighter around your shoulders, one hand brushing the edge of the window sill where the frost has finally begun to go back. Somehow, in spite of everything, you made it through. So go ahead, close your eye. Ease, the worst is behind you right now, and the earth is starting to wake up.